Good evening and welcome to tonight's Town Council meeting. Before we get started, I wanted to just recognize that Bennett Branson has his business communications class. I think you guys are joining remotely. Maybe you're trickling in now as the meeting has started, but welcome. We're glad you're here. Also, before we call the meeting to order formally, I just wanted to make sure everybody knew how to access the meeting online so you can interact online if you're currently watching on Grassroots. If you want to join up, be able to comment and do all those things online, just go to basalt.net, click on the Agendas and Minutes tab, go to the April 8th, 2025 meeting packet, and then within that you'll find instructions to join on Zoom. So with that, I'll ask our town clerk to please call the roll.
Gladly, sir. Thank you. David Knight.
Here.
Dieter Schindler.
Here.
Angela Anderson.
Here.
Rick Stevens.
Here.
Anna Berman.
Here.
Angel Dupre-Bouchard.
Here.
And Ryan Slack.
Here.
The A-team is present, sir. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Pam. Next up, we have item 2, our consent agenda. Any of these items, anybody wants to take them off and discuss them individually, we can do that. We have item 2A, minutes for March 25, 2025. Item 2B, resolution number 12, series of 2025, resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, granting approval for a community garden in the Grace Sheehy open space parcel that is jointly owned by the Town of Basalt and Pitkin County for the 2025 growing season. 2C, resolution number 13, series of 2025, resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, granting approval for the 2025 Sunday market on Midland Spur in Lions Park in downtown Basalt. And then finally, we have our 2D Arbor Day proclamation declaring Friday, April 18th, 2025, Arbor Day in the town of Basalt. So if anybody wants to pull anything off, that's fine. Otherwise, I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda items as presented.
Mayor, I move that the Town Council approve the consent agenda items as presented. Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Next up, we have our call to the public. So just a few.
Recording in progress.
Awesome. We have a few ground rules I want to make sure everybody's aware of. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes and address your comments directly to me. You should identify yourself by name and address when making comments, and also, and this goes for the public hearings later in the meeting, please make sure you sign it in the back of the room. Make your comments courteous, civil, and constructive. That's always nice. And Town Council will make no decision nor take action except to direct the town manager. And one other note is that we have a couple of public hearings tonight that I know you guys are all ready and raring to make comments for. Save your comments on those topics for those hearings, so that can be included in the record for those public hearings. So with that, I will open it up for the call to the public. And you can come on up to the podium if you want to speak about anything that's not on the agenda tonight. Don't see anybody. Is there anyone online who would like to make comments, or is everyone just watching? All right. We'll move on then to item 4, mayor and council reports and comments. So floor is open for anyone who would like to go. All right, I think everyone wants to cruise along here. I don't have any comments either, so I will move on to item 5, manager's report. Ryan.
I do have a few items for tonight, so it'll slow us up a little bit, but worthy items. So the first thing I will mention is I sat down with George Newman and Bill Kane last week. They have been in touch with Hannah, and they're asking Hannah to sit on the Transportation Coalition for the 21st Century. So essentially what this is sort of Mid-Valley, Upper Valley coalition to discuss transportation alternatives that might help to alleviate traffic. That's just kind of simply put, are there new technologies other than infrastructure improvements, which don't, in their studies, don't show to make marked improvements for reducing traffic congestion. So they're looking at other technologies. And Hannah is a willing participant in that. And what I just mentioned to them is I thought it was appropriate to bring it to you all. Hannah would, essentially represent the town. I don't believe it would require a formal nod from you all, but an informal one would be great. And then she can come back and report to the council on any findings or requests.
Some thrilling recaps of 3-hour meetings about traffic, so. I do think it overlays nicely with work I do at SKICO on climate and transportation, how that overlays with urban planning, how that overlays with affordable housing, and where we're creating transit nodes, so.
Great. So it's policy and kind of infrastructure, all of it together holistically?
Mm-hmm.
Awesome. And I'm glad you're representing us, so.
Cool.
Yeah, I would second that. I think that it's important that someone on the council stay aware of what's going on with it. Sorry, it's great to have someone like you, Hannah, available to do this, because the Community Growth Advisory Committee that was set up a couple years ago is focused on this, and they're already talking about transit nodes and things like that, so the connection to us is obvious, and we need to be on top of that consistently. So thank you.
Great, thank you. Second item is we were asked, as we do get from time to time, if there was a level of interest from council to sign on to a letter. This comes through the Climate Action Collaborative. And essentially, at the federal level, there's apparently some movement afoot to try to lobby from big oil interests to lobby for new protections on oil extraction, essentially, I think aimed mainly at sort of environmental cleanup and those types of issues that come along with energy extraction. And so there's a letter, a form letter, and they're asking if either the council would like to sign on to that collectively, or if you would prefer to look at that individually and then sign on. That being said, I think it's April 18th, so I don't think we'll be coming back together. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention tonight. And I can certainly follow up with you on this, but if there's any direction or thoughts tonight, please let me know.
Are those in our inbox, the letter or draft of it, you said?
I can forward that to you.
Okay, that would be great. I'm sure we'll be amenable to that, so.
Yeah,
Okay.
I read the letter because Matt Scher at Eagle County, an Eagle County commissioner, had sent that to me, and I already signed it just as an individual, but essentially what the oil and gas industry is asking for is to be shielded from liability in certain scenarios, and this letter would ask that we don't shield the industry from certain liability in those scenarios. So I think in terms of climate action, it's kind of a sensible, not too punchy thing to do.
Thanks for that.
Sounds good.
And then the last two things I have are actually kind of fun. So the first is, where's Jeff? Jeff, come up. So I'm going to introduce everybody to Jeff Blevins. So Jeff Blevins is our streets foreman. And Jeff has been helping us over the last 4 months as we have been without a public works director, and really kind of stepped up and been a great partner and liaison to the town hall, to our finance department, and to other departments. And I think our public works folks don't always get the recognition. They're out there early in the morning, helping to keep our town streets safe and keep our parks clean and picked up. And so I wanted to just ask Jeff to come in today, and I'm going to read a commendation for him. And this will end up going into his personnel file, but I thought we'd embarrass him a little bit and bring him in here. So, and I'm glad there's a nice crowd here tonight. So So the purpose of this memorandum is to recognize Jeff Blevins for his additional support and attention while transitioning to the new Public Works Director. Jeff took on a special assignment to be a liaison between the Public Works Department and the Finance and Administrative Departments. The past 4 months has been Jeff's busy time of year as the streets foreman, when he's often up early directing our plowing efforts for the town. And when I say early, that can mean 2 a.m, getting up, looking at storms, watching cameras to see if we need to call the crew in. In addition to these normal duties, Jeff attended our department head meetings and met regularly with town hall staff, town hall and other staff to ensure our communication stayed open and our workflow could be maintained for the year. Jeff has always been a great employee. I've enjoyed seeing him grow in his position. He regularly monitors storms in the winter and determines whether plowing operations are needed. He ensures Two Rivers Road and Frying Pan Road are cleared of rocks and debris and assists with maintaining our roadways during the warmer months. These are only a few of the tasks that he performs at a high level for our community. I'm happy to give Jeff this well-deserved commendation and to thank him for his years of service to the community. So, thanks so much.
Thank you, Jeff, for all you've done. It's a huge help.
And then the last thing is to introduce Justin Foreman, who is our new Public Works Director, and he just started this week. So just come up and introduce yourself briefly, but we're certainly happy to have him aboard, and I think he's going to be an amazing fit for the staff and also for the community. So thanks so much.
Yeah, Justin Foreman. Looking forward to meeting every one of you all, working with you all, as well as supporting the community and staff. Really excited and honored to have this position, so many great years to come.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome.
That's all I have, Mayor.
All right. Moving right along into council actions. So we have item 6A, our public hearing and second reading of ordinance number 3, series of 2025, ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, approving town code amendments, amending section 16203C, renting of rooms and housing units, and amending appendix C, fee schedule, other fees table, establish a short-term rental fee. James.
Michelle is going to start things off, I think, briefly here.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a little context to our discussion tonight and a reminder of some of the overview of where this came from Bach. One of the items here is to create, although it'll be nominal, to create a funding source for future affordable housing programs.
Could you speak up?
I sure can. Thank you. And so that's one of the overviews. The other is to not be behind and be one of the only communities in the valley to not have an STR fee that is appropriate for the current market conditions. As we all know, there is a big change happening from up valley into our community, and so it's important to consider that as we go forward. And then third, as you have hopefully all seen in the packet, staff has created several different options for you in different ways to adopt and consider the regulatory fee. So just wanted to give that context as we're going through all the details of going forward. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And to get back to some of the technical aspects, it is a public hearing and second reading of an ordinance, and it is to consider code amendments to Town Code Section 16-203, which is the short-term rental section of the Town Code, as well as to Appendix C, which is the fee schedule to establish a short-term regulatory fee. As a little bit more background, as part of the EPS contract on the housing report, they were required to provide the town with a legal nexus report for establishing a short-term rental regulatory fee, as the town council was interested in having short-term rentals better mitigate their impact on the town's housing supply. And as was discussed in February, EPS did provide that legal nexus report, and it's in your packet materials. It concludes that the town could enact a fee on short-term rentals of up to $5,064 per bedroom per year, and that would be the maximum fee that could be enacted. This fee would need to be placed in a dedicated fund for affordable housing creation. And the code amendment language that you have in your draft ordinance, as I noted, proposes a code amendment that would add an annual fee of $2,532 per bedroom, which is half the amount that EPS's analysis said could be legally charged in terms of a fee. In the February meeting, it was noted that the Planning and Zoning Commission and BAC, the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission, felt it appropriate to add the fee at half the amount that could be legally added and kind of monitor the impacts on short-term rentals over the next year or two and see if it needs to be adjusted. So that was BAC and Planning and Zoning Commission's recommendation. The Planning and Zoning Commission also thought that a property owner should be allowed to have an exemption if they occupied the unit as their primary residence and did not rent out on a short-term basis more than 60 total days in a year. So the draft ordinance that you have in your packet includes that exemption recommendation from the Planning and Zoning Commission. At the February 11th meeting, the Town Council continued the public hearing and second reading on the ordinance to this April 8th meeting after considering public comments. Since the February 11th meeting, EPS evaluated their math and looked in the study, and they made an adjustment or two. It didn't change the overall conclusion of the fee analysis, and we have Brian Duffany here this evening on the Zoom call from EPS to discuss that after the staff comments. EPS has also been working to try and get Colorado Tourism Office spending data, as was suggested by the Chamber, but has not been able to get that guest spending per day data from CTO. So they still believe that the accurate data used in the study related to spending is the best available data, and they can speak to that as well. Staff has also formulated some additional options, as Michelle alluded to. You could change the exemptions that are included in the draft ordinance based on some of these alternatives or maybe other alternatives that you come up with. The first one would be to change, is actually what you have in the ordinance, which is the 2532 per bedroom as a annual fee with the 60-day total day exemption. There's a second option, which would be the 2532 per bedroom, and then you could extend the number of days that somebody could rent it on a short-term basis to 90 total days and still get an exemption. Number three there would be to cut the fee to a quarter of what the maximum fee could be, so $12.66 per bedroom with the 60 total days. And then number four is just a further adjustment on that theme. You could do the 2532 per bedroom and extend the number of days that somebody could rent it out to 120 total days and still get an exemption. And then kind of more adjustments on that theme. You could reduce the fee to a quarter of the maximum, the $12.66, and extend the days out to 120 that somebody could rent it. And then further, there's also another one here that was added that could be $12.66 per bedroom for a total of 90 days and still qualify for the exemption. So, you know, a bunch of different variations on the amount that could be charged for the fee, as well as the total number of days that could be rented and still gain an exemption. And so this evening, staff would suggest hearing comments from Brian Duffney from EPS about the adjustments to the study, and then hearing some thoughts from Town Attorney Jeff Conklin, if he has them, and then taking public comments, because it is a continued public hearing. Staff believes that there are several decision options that council has this evening. The first one is you could approve the ordinance as drafted, and this is at the bottom of the staff memo on page 2. You could provide direction to staff on amendments to the ordinance and approve the amended ordinance, or you could deny the ordinance and direct staff to discontinue consideration of the ordinance. And then kind of a fourth option would be to identify any additional information that you might need, and then further continue the public hearing to a future meeting. So with that said, I will stop sharing my screen here and ask Brian Duffney, who's on the Zoom call, if he could provide some additional comment.
Absolutely. Am I able to share a screen as well?
Yes, yes, you
I think
are.
it would help to walk through the material. So I'm just going to continue in the packet from where you left off, James. And just a quick caveat, we just moved into a new office space and we have some work being done directly outside my door. Hopefully it won't cause a disruption. If it does, I will need to just pick up and go to another space.
There it is.
Can you hear that?
It's not
It's
not
all
so
good.
bad.
It's
Yeah.
not bad. You can go ahead.
You guys roll with it.
Let me try this. Hang on. Bear with me.
Brian, we might have Jeff provide any additional comments he has first, and then you can jump in.
Do that.
Yeah, so it's at our first reading, provided some comments on. Provided some comments on some of the legal challenges to STR fees in Colorado, and then provided you all with a privilege memo, providing a little bit more detail on some of those cases and potential claims, claims in other cases. So I was really just going to see if there's any comments or questions that you might have, and if there are questions, whether you want to have an executive session to discuss those, or if there's those that you'd want me to answer here in an open session. But really, that was what I wanted to tee up.
Great.
And so
Do you want us to
maybe,
answer that now, or do you want me to come back to it maybe?
It's up to you guys. I'm here if you have questions on what I've provided. I'm happy to answer.
We'll return to you
Okay.
potentially. Brian, are you good with your headset and everything?
I think so. How's that? Let's give it a shot.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, great. I'm gonna share my screen again. But the timing on these things is always perfect. Okay, here's the packet. Yes, so we prepared a short memo to walk through some comments and questions that were presented in the last meeting on this issue. There was I don't want to call it an error. It was a sum that was not, well, I guess it was an error. I first want to apologize for that. It's, these things, we try our best to double, triple check everything, and this is the kind of stuff that keeps me up at night, and occasionally it does happen. Luckily, in this case, it does not have a material, it does not change the fee calculation at all. And I'll explain what happened, I'll be concise, and if there's additional questions on it, we can go back into it. So if you work in spreadsheets, you can envision that when you add numbers up in Excel, you can see where this number 2329.7 is. If you kind of eyeball these numbers, you can tell that they don't add to 2329.7. That sum was pulling from some adjacent cells and incorrectly reporting a subtotal here. Now, and the same down here as well. However, the math that drives the fee calculation is not dependent on those subtotals. It's driven by all of these component numbers that make up those subtotals. So luckily, that's a slight mistake there, did not affect the fee calculation. So there's no change to the maximum fee or the 50% or 25% options that you're considering. Any questions on that? I can move to the guest spending.
I don't think so.
Okay, I'll keep rolling. On the guest spending, there were a lot of questions and comments on people wondering if we were overstating the amount of money people spend, if we were undercounting it. And so we've been trying to dig into that further. I think my introductory comment to this is that spending data like this is rare and hard to find in a manner that's consistently reported in the sort of categories that one needs to do this type of economic impact analysis. And the Basalt, Chris at the Basalt Chamber has been very responsive and very helpful in helping us contact and work with the Colorado Tourism Office to mine some of the data that they have from a statewide tourism survey. I think this is sort of a one-off request and not in their sort of day-to-day methods of how they report out that data. So we've not received anything updated from them yet. And looking at other research that we've done over the years, we feel comfortable that the data from the ACRA study is a reasonable estimate of guest spending. So for some context, we a couple of years ago did some similar work for the town of Breckenridge, who had very detailed visitor intercept survey data that we were able to get and get access to, that had guest spending estimates by season, and recorded in several different ways. We were able to work with that, and that worked out to about $160 per day per person, compared to the $153 we're using from the ACRA study. Breckenridge is a ski area based portal. Basalt is not. Basalt is also arguably a higher cost market than Breckenridge, so those two factors probably wash out. We've looked at older data from the CTO, where they reported out statewide averages on spending. There was some 2021 data that had statewide spending for overnight outdoor person trips about $67 per day per person. I mean, we don't think that's relevant to Basalt. It's a statewide average. There's such a huge range of markets and costs and visitor profiles throughout the state. So I think given that information and just previous experience in mountain towns, we judge the 153 to be reasonable from the ACRA study. James, I think that's it. Anything else you wanted me to cover?
No, I think that's helpful, and once again, staff would suggest this evening taking public comments because it is a public hearing, and then providing council discussion and consider the ordinance.
And I'll stay online in the background and be available for additional questions as needed. So feel free to call me.
Yes,
Great, thank you, Brian. All right, so we will open up public comment for public comment in a moment. Just a reminder, make sure when you come up, you have 3 minutes. We'll be setting the timer. In the back of the room is a sign-in sheet. Please make sure you sign in there and announce, your name and your address as well. And we're going to be strict with that 3 minutes. We got a lot of people and probably another public hearing after this with a few folks as well, potentially. So with that, I will open the public hearing, and if anyone would like to come up to the front of the room, please do so. Make your comments.
Hi, Brenda Wild. I live at 513 Lake Court, Basalt. I'm a professional realtor with more than 28 years in this valley. I'm an owner broker of a real estate office in the valley as well. I've served on my local board. I currently serve with the Colorado Association of Realtors. I also sit on the National Association of Realtors with Resort and Second Home Committee. I know this whole area very well. I've spent a lot of time on this area regarding best practices, taxes, fees relating to what you're proposing. I'm also a property owner here and intend to rent at some point during my ownership, so this also affects me personally. NER granted funding for a resort study on rental markets in the mountain area and resort markets. The study cost hundreds of thousands of dollars and has been submitted to council. I know that a couple of you have received it, and I sure hope you spent some time looking at it, because it does have the data that you're looking for, and it does go into depth, and it covers multiple resort towns such as this. We have used this in numerous cases, such as what you're proposing, as a good database with spending, which these people do bring in quite a bit of money. If you do go forward with proposing the highest based fees in the nation at this point, at what you're looking at, you're going to see a reduction of those people coming and spending their money, which is going to impact every single person in this room, the business owners and the homeowners. We're hoping that you'd take some time to actually spend some time on that. We're here, there's numerous people that would be happy, and also the person who did the report would be more than happy to meet with you and give you more in-depth information. You have an incredible amount of options that have no credibility as to what the impact will be on the property owners. Most likely, with the exorbitant fees you're proposing, you may see them actually get out of the whole entire rental market, and then you have nothing as far as income coming into this employee housing fund. What you're proposing will raise prices in the real estate market, disable owners to be able to rent their properties by imposing highest fees nationwide. This move will not add rentals to employee housing market. The units most likely will sit vacant and not generate tax nor revenue dollars for the town. There are many options to increase revenue for employee housing and tax revenue, which are better structured and better educated choices that you're currently proposing. I urge you all not to vote on this, as it will create a financial void for the town that is currently brought in by rental properties. I'm asking you to deny the ordinance and look at realistic opportunities to facilitate development of employee housing program that will achieve what we are all working towards in the valley, which is housing for all.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Hello.
Hi, Mayor Knight. My name is Catherine Coe, and my address is 464 South 3rd Street, Unit 4, Carbondale. I live in Carbondale, but I'm testifying because, like most young people renting in the valley, we are not loyal to one town. We'll go wherever the affordable housing is. So I believe the decision to implement this fee does apply to me. I moved here for a man, currently my fiance, and for the mountains in January 2023. He's a director of a local nonprofit, and I didn't have anything special going on in Denver, so I chose to relocate. It was the right choice. Luckily, I was able to move into his one-bedroom apartment, and the rent is very affordable. We pay $1,100 for a unit in a house near the 3rd Street Center. It really is awesome. We've had issues with the plumbing in the house and went 3 days without water last winter, but all in all, it's been a pretty good situation. We are not cost burdened by housing, and we have been able to save money. But my fiance and I want to start a family in a couple of years. We can't raise a family in the apartment we live in, but the cost of renting family-friendly apartments, along with all of the costs associated with having babies, would not make sense with the amount of money we both make at our nonprofit jobs. Yes, we could find new jobs, maybe remote tech jobs, but we don't want to do that. We'd like to be able to continue to do work that contributes positively to this community. We could also ask our parents for financial help, but how many people can actually do that? And do we only want people who have intergenerational wealth like that to be able to afford to live here? Since I moved here 2.5 years ago, I have never felt sure about our future here. I have lived month to month, wary about investing too much time or energy in friendships, in community, in my job. I've never really let myself embrace this place because I've always felt like we will likely have to move away. I've always felt like With the crises we have in childcare and housing here, there's no way we can stay. And I'm not alone in that. Not being able to find affordable and attainable housing in this town means that there are countless people like me, young, energetic, civic-minded, and caring, who are living with 1 foot in and 1 foot out the door. When people don't know if they'll be able to afford housing somewhere, even if they have an important and stable job in the community, what you get in return is transience. People who come here for a good time and then they leave. People who are here to consume but not to create. This goes on for long enough, and eventually we get a community that is disengaged and fragmented, a community that stands for nothing and doesn't know who they are. The lack of affordable and attainable housing in this town, this valley, has reached crisis levels. We know this, and we have the opportunity to take a step, even though it's one piece of a bigger, more complex solution to change this. By passing this ordinance as drafted, owners who rent their property short-term have the opportunity to be a part of the solution to a problem that ultimately affects all of us in a myriad of negative ways. My question to you is, why would we not just try it? Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. We have somebody online. I want to make sure we're going back and forth between in the room and online. So it looks like Richard Mason has his hand up.
Richard, if you would like to unmute and speak to the council, go ahead.
Good evening. So I can't display my face here, right?
We can hear you great,
Can
though.
you guys hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
You can. Okay, great. My name's Richard Mason. I'm from actually Summit County. Breckenridge was the first municipality to implement this fee. And it's caused a lot of issues and a lot of division within the community. I'd hate to see Basalt go down that same road. As the first speaker indicated, a lot of local businesses will be severely impacted with this fee. I know at least one property manager in Breckenridge the fees almost destroyed his business. He's represents a number of larger bedroom homes, and a lot of those owners have just opted not to continue renting short term or have sold out of the community. Second point is you heard a lot of guesses from Brian with EPS, a lot of guesses on what the income is, what the spend is. This is a large undertaking with a lot of risks, some of it legal risks. The town of Vail recently decided no bedroom fee because of those risks. I think it's a big gamble. Two more points. Employees generated. I think Councilmember Slack in the February meeting was talking about guesses around how the employees supporting, actually generated by STRs, how they this fee is representative to them. And I think it's really important. I think it's on page 63 of your handout. This fee is not calculated based on just employees generated from STRs. It's based on a model, implant model, which basically holds STRs responsible for multiple of unrelated employees to STRs. That's important to note. So basically, they're taking the spending, and again, it's not, the spending is way overstated. It'd be equivalent of looking at Silverthorne compared to Breckenridge in terms of proximity. Last point I want to get out, so I'm running out of time. You can't have special carve-outs for locals for this fee versus out-of-state individuals. This has already been decided in the Fifth Circuit Federal Court of Appeals. The case is Hignell Stark versus City of New Orleans. They had attempted to do special carve-outs for their local residents, and the court basically ruled against that. And you'll find several municipalities and counties within the state have built their regulations around this rule. So that's something really important to key in on. And thank you again for allowing me to speak. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Richard. Who would like to go next?
Hello, Trevor Benthusen from 23284 Two Rivers Road, number 8 here in Basalt. I had a few follow-up comments from, I guess, my comments in the February 11th meeting. As you just heard from Brian Duffany, EPS is still waiting to hear if there is spending data for Basalt. We don't know. Maybe there is, maybe there's not. But if that data does exist for Basalt, then the ACRA spending data is not valid. And just because we don't know if we have that data for Basalt yet, that doesn't automatically make the ACRA data valid. I think that's very important to have for the legal nexus for this. Additionally, more comments about exemptions from the fee. Of course, as the last speaker just talked about, the issue of, I guess, an exemption for the primary residence. The EPS study doesn't have any framework to allow for exemptions. So there's the primary residence exemption and the 60 days, 90 days, 120. I think it's important that you have the legal framework to do that. The impact doesn't start the moment somebody crosses from 60 to 61 days. And whatever number is made up needs to be supported by a study. Additionally, it doesn't, it's not a fair and equitable fee if implemented. The short-term rental that rents for 90 days gets the same fee that rents for 200 days. Also, the per bedroom, right? You can load a bedroom as a bunk room and have 6 beds in there. There's going to be a different impact with that, and that's what this fee doesn't accommodate for. Also, I could throw a pull-out in the living room. It's not a bedroom, but I can sleep more people. So I don't think this fee is equitable in that manner. And also, what about a studio? Is a studio just grouped in as a 1-bedroom or not? So I think there's a lot of issues for you all to to consider before implementing this fee. Thank you.
Thank you. There we go.
Okay.
Oh, it's great. No, there's nobody. I was just checking. You're good.
Okay. Just figured I'd jump in.
Perfect.
Good evening. My name is Kristen Maley. I live at 250 Riverside Drive. I was presenting today. This is not my normal attire. I was presenting for the Board of Realtors. I'm first and foremost a resident of Basalt. My husband and I purchased our home in 2001 and raised 2 beautiful girls in a community that had no covenants or rentals purposefully. One of you mentioned in the last meeting that you purchased in Willits and thought the 30-day minimum was just fine. Well, you purchased knowing the restriction was in place. The regulatory fees now are all new and possibly onerous to some. I'm also the president-elect of the Aspen Board of Realtors. Tough year for property owners in the state of Colorado. I don't know if any of you have heard about House Bill 1098, restricting landlords on long-term lease non-renewals. It's worth looking up because now you don't want a long-term rent. You won't be able to evict your tenant. Now with this STR at the local level, I'm concerned. ABOR, the Aspen Board of Realtors, is part of the Western Mountain Resort Alliance, who recently conducted a study of STRs in Pickens County to shed light on economic and social impacts of STRs. The key findings in their report, and Brenda Wild mentioned the report earlier. I was wishing she would have mentioned all of these so I didn't have to get up. STRs contribute significantly to local economies, generating millions in tax revenue and supporting thousands of jobs. The study estimates the STRs in Pickens County generated over $553 million in economic output in 2022, directly supporting 2,480 jobs. STRs provide flexible and varied accommodation options, catering to a wider range of traveler preferences and budgets rather than hotels. The study found that STRs were unlikely to be a major cause of increased housing prices from 2018 to 2022. With responsible property management practices, STRs can positively impact neighborhoods and communities. If this passes, STR fees will either be passed along to tenants with higher rental prices, creating an even greater chasm between visitors and locals, Or owners may choose to leave their homes vacant, hurting local businesses the most. There is no guaranteed nexus between STR taxing and fees and affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Hannah Sago. I live in Glenwood Springs. I've lived there for 3 years, and I am a climate advocate professionally. I came to comment because, like Catherine said before, Basalt doesn't exist in isolation. It's part of the broader Roaring Fork Valley, and so I think that's an important perspective to take into account. I live in Glenwood because it's affordable, and Basalt's not affordable for me. And I'm here to thank you for proposing a short-term rental fee that would help address the housing affordability crisis in this valley and encourage you to adopt it as drafted. Like many others, I moved here because I love skiing, backpacking, climbing, but I'm also deeply committed to making this community better as a community organizer and activist. And I've advocated for issues from protecting our climate to keeping trans youth safe in our schools. I can imagine it's a hard time to work in climate, and there were budget cuts at my organization. It's getting harder for me to afford living here. And so I'm deeply grateful to you all for your leadership in bringing Basalt residents daily. And passing this fee would be one way to support them in return by expanding affordable housing in the community. I hope you're also thinking about the residents of the local mobile home parks whose community is under threat right now from developers. If they're forced out, where will they go if there's no affordable solutions? This might not help them immediately, but it's part of a long-term solution to what is clearly a crisis. It's very clear to me that the short-term rental fee, as drafted, is a good policy. You can implement it and tweak as needed, as I said, and it's part of many other solutions to a complex problem, and it will absolutely be better than nothing. I hope you'll pass it as drafted, and as you consider, I hope you ask yourselves what kind of community you want to build and what kind of legacy you want to leave.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate your comments. We'll go ahead and take somebody in the room here. Pam, if you see someone raise their hand or someone else join online, let us know, but we'll just keep going with the room in the meantime.
I always see Richard Mason online.
Yeah, okay. Hello. Yeah, you're good.
Hi, my name is Tucker Knight. I don't think we're related.
We're not related.
Yeah.
Not to my knowledge.
Not today, anyway. But I am a 8th grade teacher at Basalt Middle School. I'm used to teaching to a lot of 13 and 14-year-olds. And I currently make $63,000. I am 27 years old. I have almost 2 master's degrees, and I've done everything I can to raise my salary. I'm probably the highest paid 27-year-old teacher in the Western Slope. The average home cost in Basalt is about $1.3 million. I think this is a problem everyone in this room is very familiar with. Most of my teacher friends don't have teacher housing and really struggle to afford to be here, but care so much about the communities that we work with. Aside from just teaching, there's also a ton of nonprofits based around Basalt, like the Buddy Program or English in Action, who pay even less than our public schools do, and also struggle to keep people because of housing. This is an issue, again, I think we're all familiar with, and in a lot of moments ask ourselves, what can we do to solve this problem? We need nonprofits and public schools as much as we need local businesses. All of these things work together to create a really strong community, and affordable housing is a really key part of that solution. You have presented a potential solution to the problem. It wouldn't solve everything, but it would really help in a really tangible way. And I just want to encourage you, as you drafted it, if you want to tweak it, that's fine. And as Michelle mentioned at the beginning, this is really useful and is a part of the solution. And I just really want to encourage you as someone who depends on affordable housing to do this. Additionally, because this is what Michelle said, getting around to it, that a lot of communities around us have already done this, and it has been successful in many ways. And it might not be perfect in all the ways, but it does work, and it doesn't hurt the people with the short-term rentals as much as it would help the people that depend on the affordable housing. So just putting that in there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments.
Hi, my name is Natalie. I didn't know you could go online. That's great. I'm actually of Carbondale as well on Barber Drive. I feel for the ladies who just spoke as well in that, you know, I've lived in the Valley for 10 years. Originally, I moved from Australia. I am an American citizen. I have a son now. And a 3-year-old who's just with my neighbor's friends. I do feel for those girls. I've moved like 12 times in 10 years with the dog as well. It was very challenging. But I'm actually of a different view in that I see these fees as too high for the short-term rentals. And actually, so I manage, my friend bought a home here 8 years ago. He had to move to be closer to his child for his ex-partner to Denver, and he doesn't want to long-term rent so that he can come and still use his home and be part of the community. He sees this as his home and hopes to return. If he were to long-term rent, he would actually make more money. Unfortunately, if he were to long-term rent, there are people that want to come out for 6 months for the season, for 3 months that will pay more. They're from New York. They're families with a lot of money. I see the short-term, the reason he's short-terming is purely so that he can come up and still be a part of the community and spend more than half of his time here and then be able to be in Denver to be closer to his daughter. So I don't think that the short-term rentals are the issue. I don't want people coming in and buying properties here just to short-term rent. But I feel like people who it's their primary home and are short-term renting, I feel like they're doing it in order to maintain residency here. I do also believe the per bedroom fee is concerning given that it's not equitable in that, as someone previously said, you know, a 3-bedroom unit could be taxed the same as a big 2-bedroom luxury house or something like that. I do also believe I've seen people who are booking Shane's property, and it does serve the local economy. It's seasonal workers such as roofing crews, builders, Basalt market vendors, the Carbondale Mountain Fair market vendors, wedding staff, and they stay there during the busy times helping provide local businesses fill that staff shortage. I've also seen a lot of this for nursing staff as well that come in and need it as like that 3-week to fill the gap. Local families have also used it a lot for relatives.
Thank you.
Sure.
That was 3. Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate your comments. Come on up.
Good evening. My name is Michael Schüppe. I've been a Basalt resident for the past 10 years. We live at 629 Hillcrest Drive. We share our house, our residence, with 2 permanent housemates to provide some affordable housing. And I manage an Airbnb unit in our house. My husband and I, we're both artists and musicians, and we're both working full-time in various capacities, and the Airbnb and the housemates, all of that combined makes it possible for us to pay our mortgage and to live here. So I understand the concern around short-term rentals, but I want to just be an example of positive community impact through Airbnb, and I will just read a brief excerpt from my house manual that people find when they come into the Airbnb. Dear friend, thank you truly for choosing to stay with us. Your stay is more than just a few nights in a cozy home, it's part of something bigger. Because you're here, two musicians, that's us, are able to live in this beautiful valley and continue to give back through art, music, and community building. Your support helps us work with local organizations who often can't afford to pay livable wages for the time and energy we joyfully invest. In the past year alone, I wrote and directed a show for Challenge Aspen, a summer camp where people with disabilities take the stage and shine. I directed a performance project with Voices, a local nonprofit that amplifies underrepresented voices through the arts. I led a summer camp for kids focused on self-regulation, meditation, and performance, helping young people explore their inner world and creative expression. Paul Music directed a main stage production with Aspen Community Theater and 2 concert performances with the Aspen Choral Society. He also began a new chapter going back to school. On top of that, we both serve part-time at our local Unitarian Universalist community where we share music most Sundays and help with the behind-the-scenes work to keep the spirit of the place alive. All of this, the creativity, connection, and care is made possible because you decided to vacation with us. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you. That's all I wanted to say.
Thank you for your comments, and that excerpt.
Hi, my name is Tracy Zabel. I live in Carbondale, but I was able to move here to the Valley because I had an opportunity to live in an affordable way, and it's been such a joy. I would have never imagined myself living here, but because I could live here in a way that I could afford, I've just loved it. And before I got here, I looked up like Airbnbs in Basalt, and for a weekend in June, and there were over 1,000 listings, from $450 to over $1,000 a night. And if you're renting yours out for $1,000 a night for 15 nights a year, or 15 nights a month, over 12 months, that's like $180,000. So how is it bad to pay a $5,000 fee? I think that seems reasonable to help with affordable housing. Rents increased in the Valley from 40% from 2020 to 2023, according to a study by the Mountain West Regional Housing Coalition. And it's just not sustainable. And because I have affordable housing, I am able to invest my discretionary dollars in the community, in recreation here, in the local businesses and restaurants. And by spending my time here, because I don't have to commute hours a week like some of my friends have to do, driving in from Newcastle and Rifle. So the gift of time to live and work in the same town allows me the ability to be here. I also am fortunate enough to own a home in Denver that I cannot short-term rent because of the rules there. They don't allow it. I would love to pay a fee to rent my home out short-term, but I'm not able to. So what I'm doing is transitioning it to a long-term rental property. And while it's not the path I wanted to go, I understand the city's trying to do what they can to keep the city affordable. It's a much different state than it was when I moved here in 2009. I loved living here as a young adult, where my rent was cheap and I could afford to do a lot of things. And I appreciate this council's attempt at thinking of ways to be creative in creating affordable housing here in the Valley. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Who'd like to go next? Elise. It's good to see you.
Hi, Elise Hoddle, 113 Ridge Road here in Basalt, thanks to the kindness of a local who rented to us long-term. So I urge you to not take the teeth out of this initiative. There are impacts, both positive and negative, of short-term rentals. The positive side, of course, is bringing us tourist dollars, and of course having the flexibility to stay in a different type of lodging than a hotel might provide. Unfortunately, those tourist dollars also come with negative impacts, including the need for more workers, which are displaced by the short-term rentals. So it's really a catch-22. It's definitely a case of musical chairs here in the Valley, and I feel very lucky to have found a chair to sit in temporarily. But in addition to the displacement of workers, making the rents less affordable, also noisy parties, people that aren't part of the community, that don't treat it the same way that we do as locals, and a loss of small town character is a serious threat, and it's something that has been repeated over and over again in our planning process, how important small town character is. All of these things are what we call externalities in economics, and the way that you account for an externality is You can ban it, certainly, but that's not what I'm asking today, because there are positive impacts to short-term rentals. But another way is to have some sort of financial compensation for it, and that is what the short-term rental fee is to me. So I think that you should follow the recommendation of EPS. I've worked in the planning world. They're very reputable. I think that the P&Z and Bach has given you good direction in terms of having the amount of the fee. That way, if the ACRA data is incorrect, you've already accounted for it. And most of the fee is going to get passed along to the renter, so it's not as much of a harm to the owner of the property. And I do feel for those few folks that probably fall in between those two windows of how many days you rent and how long you rent it to, and I do feel for those people, but I am afraid that they're probably a small percentage of the STRs in our community. Yes, so please don't take the teeth out of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Come on up.
Hello. My name is Deanna. I was born and raised in Aspen, and I now live in Willits. I am just hearing a lot of conflating between short-term rentals and like unaffordable housing prices, and I urge you guys to remember that, you know, you have data from staff that has been working on this for a long time. I think everyone knows on the council that this isn't about punishing short-term rentals, rather finding places in which you can help subsidize affordable housing, which I think I know is a massive issue in all of our communities in the Valley. Yeah, I mean, I don't have to say more than people have already said about how hard it is to find housing here. I also just don't believe that this is a punishment for short-term rental owners. I think that whereas a lot of short-term rental owners feel that they need to not have these fees in order to continue to have their income and profit in order to keep their homes. A lot of people that have spoken tonight and who can't speak tonight but would prefer for you guys to talk about this and perhaps pass a version of it, are doing it out of necessity to have a home. So I think that that's a little bit of the difference here, and I'm not urging you necessarily to pass the ordinance number 3 as it is right now, but I am urging you guys to discuss it and hopefully ultimately pass some version of it, because we don't have many places where affordable housing is being subsidized. So I think any places in which we can, without truly hurting, you know, other members of the community, I think are important to consider. And like I said, you guys have this ordinance in front of you because of probably months of work and research by staff, and I forgot who the other people were, EPS, whatever. You guys all have your personal experience. You're obviously hearing from the people here tonight, so I'm sure you're going to have a invigorating discussion, but I just urge you guys to really consider this as what it is, which is an option to subsidize affordable housing. Thanks.
Thank you. Who would like to go next?
My name's Julie Wyckoff. 553 East Cypress Drive. I'm a homeowner. I can appreciate all the comments. I can appreciate all the comments about this being the magic bullet to assist in affordable housing, and I don't get a math connection on it. There are a lot of people that have bought property and made it affordable by having the ability to rent short term. And with this increase, it changes a rule. And I appreciate where you're going with this, but then will it be more next year, or is there a lid on it, or more changes? It's so uncertain. At the February meeting, there was a lot of comment on the hardship of this additional fee. I'm not hearing that this evening, but I see I still see that's a factor. I'd like to know the rules. So this seems to be changing rules in midstream. I bought my property, I checked in, I found out what the rules were. Personally, I would like to rent long-term, but my daughter and her family aren't able to know when they visit, so I stay in the short-term market. I have a solution that I'd like you to consider. For all the people that own rental property right now, that they be grandfathered in with the rules in which they bought their property. And then if you want to make changes going forward, on Monday, implement the new rules for people that are just purchasing the property. Then it's kind of fair for everyone. And let's see what else. Nothing. So I'd really like you to consider this grandfathering in of the people that already own the rental property. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else out there who would like to go? Stacy.
Stacy Kraft, 411 Elk Circle. Our affordable housing problem is very real, but town council should not approve this bedroom fee ordinance because it does absolutely nothing to create affordable housing. The majority of these STR properties are either occupied full-time or part-time by the owners, and they would have never been available for long-term renters because of the owner usage. The $29,000 EPS consulting report is based on the very flawed premise that the shortage of affordable housing in Basalt is somehow related to these 23 short-term rentals. EPS based their report findings on dubious financial figures obtained from a report by another consulting company that determined the average Aspen visitor spends $157 per day on dining, shopping, and recreation. It's kind of shocking that town staff, town council, P&Z, and Bach have been reviewing this EPS report for almost 5 months, and no one seems to question this bizarrely low guest spending number. A lift ticket costs $250. How on earth do you eat, ski, and shop in Aspen for $157? And these were Aspen numbers, not Basalt numbers. The figures and sources cited by EPS completely undermine the validity and credibility of their report and, by extension, this bedroom fee. Neither EPS nor the town contacted any of the owners or property managers like me of these 23 properties, even though you have all of our contact information because we already participate in the STR license program. We could have provided you with accurate information on the number of guests we host. Often it's less than the 4 guests per property that EPS estimated. With a 57% occupancy rate, STRs simply don't necessitate the need for businesses to hire extra staff to service these guests. It is estimated that 35% of the 23 properties would be exempted from this bedroom fee. That leaves only 15 STRs. The $2,500 per bedroom fee will cause some homeowners to remove their properties from the rental market altogether, further reducing the number of properties the fee could be collected from. Let's say there are 12 properties left to extract fees from. Basalt might collect $75,000 per year. This money is supposed to be earmarked for affordable housing. It would take 8 years to collect enough bedroom fee money to purchase one studio like the ones that are being built on the Clark's Market parcel, and that's at today's purchasing rate. This proposed fee is not even a drop in the bucket. It's a drop in the ocean. This fee structure would eliminate an important source of revenues for some homeowners who depend on rentals to pay part of their mortgage. It would deprive Basalt of guest dollars. It would take diners out of seats in restaurants. This entire 5-month exercise has been an expensive, futile one. It has wasted taxpayer dollars, it's wasted town staff and town council's time, and it has cast uncertainty and worry, especially among the owners who rent rooms in their homes so they can stay financially afloat.
Thank
No,
you.
this exercise is a
Thanks,
failure
Stacy.
of communication. Put your energy into helping the
Thank you,
trailer park
Stacy.
people buy their land.
Thank you,
Thanks.
Stacy.
And also incentivizing people to build
Hit the gavel.
ADUs.
We hit the gavel. Appreciate your comments. Who would like to go next?
All right, Mayor, Council, good evening. My name is Marco Dame. I live in Glenwood Springs. I'm here on behalf of being a partner in Keeling Vacation Rentals. So thank you for your time. Like last time, I had a completely different thing prepared, but what I heard tonight, I want to steer you in a different direction. So when you sit in these chairs, it is really hard sometimes to find the line of doing the right thing. And sometimes when the council thinks they're doing the right thing, some of this proves that you're not. You had a full room last time, you have a full room tonight. Tonight you get a mixed bag. Last time it was all opposition. You have opposing comments in your packet. And I commend what you're trying to do. Trust me, I really, really do. But I oppose the solution vehemently. What you're doing is you're connecting short-term rentals with affordable housing. That's two different things. If you were to separate those two and actually regulate your short-term rentals, i.e. you could up the license fee, you could charge everybody $1,000 to get their license, then everybody is equitably charged the same amount. You get a $1,000 fee. If you're afraid that STRs will overrun your town, look to our neighbors. Glenwood has high functioning regulation. Carbondale just kind of toned theirs back a little bit because they lost 50% of their rentals last year after implementing stricter rules. They had to rescind and adjust. They probably felt it in their sales tax and lodging tax revenue. So, two problems: STR regulations and affordable housing fund. And I'm not discounting all the affordable housing that's needed. I've been working on affordable housing for 20 years. And a step-by-step approach is the approach. But $125,000 that these 23 units would generate for you, drop in the ocean, like Stacy just said. It's just not enough. In 10 years, $1.2 million will get you maybe a condo, if you're lucky. So implementing this $2,500 per bedroom, you will not only not get you $125,000 potential $1,000, you will also lose lodging tax and you will lose sales tax, because from our experience, our owners will shut their STRs down and they will just be second homeowners. Fund for affordable housing, like I said last time, is a ballot measure. Have the tourists pay for your affordable housing. Up your lodging tax. Or even more, even a stronger way is create an occupancy tax. I know the state tried a couple times, they failed. You guys are CAST members. You guys know that CAST's been talking about bringing it forward to legislation again this year. Didn't happen. Look at that kind of stuff.
Thank you.
Take it apart.
Appreciate your comments.
Hey guys, I'm Matt J, 364 Somerset Way. I'm not nearly as articulate as anyone else, but I'm going to go through my comments. First, I'd like to clear up a couple things. I think people have mentioned how much money people are making, grossly overestimating it, $185,000 on rentals. Someone mentioned homeowners come from intergenerational wealth. I don't, so I kind of took that as an offense. And then it was also mentioned that there's a lot of disruptions caused by STRs, and I think we discussed this last meeting, and that wasn't necessarily the case. So just want to get that back in the record. I actually appreciate everyone's comments who are supporting affordable housing, and that's not why we're here, right? We're here to talk about short-term rentals. So I think we should totally abandon this, and we should come up with a long-term solution that helps the affordability of housing. This is a short-term solution. It doesn't raise any money. It's burdensome on people who've invested the most amount of money in their most valuable asset and are committed to your community. I don't think you guys have thought through this clearly. And I'm most concerned actually about the comments of EPS making suggestions about probably washed out data, right? Like these are huge decisions you're making with our most valuable assets. If you don't have the best data, you should, at least table this and wait until you have the most relevant, accurate information to make the right decision so we don't end up like Carbondale and having loss of income and loss of short-term rentals. That's it.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you. I feel like I should stand up here till you hit the gavel.
That's funny. Who else would like to go? Anyone? We have another Richard online with the hand up.
Richard, if you would like to speak to the town council, please unmute yourself and you can speak.
Hi, this is actually Kim, not Richard. The account's under his name. We're at 23284 Two Rivers Road, number 8, Richard and Kim Benthusen. I've heard several people this evening truly feel that short-term rental regulatory fee would help the affordable housing issue. And this is absolutely not a solution to the affordable housing issue. The funds that this would generate are so minimal, it would do nothing to improve affordable housing. Our unit rents for an average of $187.56 a night. As my letter stated that I wrote, if we were to rent for 180 days, that's $33,760, less the cleaning fees, HOA fees, insurance, la-di-da, we would net $15,000. And that doesn't even consider taking out the consumables like toilet paper, soap, dish soap, paper towels, laundry soap. So you're talking about, I've heard people speaking as if this is a cash cow. It is absolutely not a cash cow for us anyway. And we are priced just like neighbors are. They're not getting any more than we charge. The one issue that I really have a hard time even bringing up is the lawsuit that was found in New Orleans, where the United States, the appeals, oh my gosh, I'm trying to pull it up on my computer, I can't find it. I did write you an email about it. It's about discriminating against non-resident owners. I don't want this for any short-term rental owner, whether they're a resident of Basalt, full-time, part-time, or non-resident. However, I think it is very important for you to consider being discriminatory against non-resident owners in this case, and charging something different or not charging or what have you. So I thank you for your time today.
Thank you. Appreciate your comments. Anyone else? I don't see any hands online. I see more people in the room, but I'm not sure anybody else is going to come up. So if no one else has any comments, I will close the public hearing. And we'll open it up for council questions and comments. So, and like just to remind everybody, Jeff is, there also if we have any specific questions, legal questions for him. So who would like to start?
I'll tee it off.
Do it.
All right. So I appreciate everybody's stopping by and making their comments this evening. It is a complex issue. It's multifaceted. There is no silver bullet. It's mostly because it's a complex issue. I don't think we should look at this solution as a silver bullet. I think we should look at what's before us as a tool in a toolbox to try to make some ground on it. I mean, I'm not talking about it being a cash cow either. I'm not talking about raising fees to solve the problem. It's going to be a whole concert, a whole suite of things that we have to address, and the only one before us right now is affordable housing. And I could, and short-term rentals. And as much as, you know, it's tempting to kind of pull these apart, for me, you know, it's a little bit more difficult. I just feel that, you know, more short-term rentals, less long-term rentals, scarcity, increase in demand, prices go up, and we have ourselves an issue. There's a lot of contributing factors to that, and I don't think, you know, again, that this is a silver bullet, but it's definitely an arrow in the quiver, and that's what's before us now. So, you know, was it Tucker that said, what can we do to solve the problem? Well, we're going to have to do a lot of things to solve this problem, and I view this as one. I know that short-term housing, at least in a study by, was it Grandview, said that it's a $68 billion industry. It's going to be a $103 industry. They predict $103 billion industry. They predict by 2030. So it's definitely growing. There's interest here, and I understand the allure for it. I do. But in this seat here, my concern is, how do we address an issue that's very, very real to everybody in this valley, whether they own short-term rentals or not? And I think a fee is necessary as a small drop in the bucket. I think further measures are necessary, probably a lodging tax increase that we'll have to go to the voters for. But if I sit here and I talk to the folks that I talk to and walk the neighborhood that I walk, they expect me to do something on this issue. So I'm in favor of the fee. I think it needs to be lower. I would propose that we look at it probably being around 15% or so. That's $750 a bedroom. As somewhere to start, it makes it a little more palatable, but we have to understand this is a tool, and we're going to put a bunch of tools on this to try to probably just even catch up. And I feel that we're going to have to open the hood multiple times to get it right. So maybe in my opinion, 25 is probably 2,500, 50% is probably too much, but it can't be zero, in my opinion.
All right, well, thanks, Dieter. Appreciate the comments. Who else wants to go?
I think that the question before us is twofold, and that is, what are we trying to accomplish, right? We're trying to raise funds for affordable housing, and it also seems like there's been a lot of comment about trying to limit the number of STRs in our community. Those are two different things, and in my opinion, this ordinance is flawed in achieving both of them. That is not to say that I am opposed to any STR fee. I am much more in favor of a increased lodging tax. You know, to Michelle's point about us being behind the ball and look at what all the other communities are doing. I mean, I think we're all warned by our mothers about jumping off bridges when we were young. Just because everybody else is doing something, does that mean that we have to? You know, I'm kind of haunted by that. But again, when I look at the other communities, they have much higher overall percentage lodging taxes or STR taxes that are applied more equitably across the board and also raise more money. That's not to say that every dollar isn't a valid dollar. I would rather see us go that route. And then, if we're also concerned about limiting the number of STRs, we look at a separate mechanism to do that. We limit the number of permits we want to give, like other communities have. You know, we look at that. But I don't like the idea of penalizing people who bought a home, whether they are local residents or not, bought a home based on certain financial projections that we are now altering pretty severely, right? So like Dieter, I mean, if I were going to get behind this, it would have to be a much lower number. It would be a smaller tool in the toolbox alongside, you know, something, again, that's going to generate more revenue to achieve what we want to achieve, which is raising money for affordable housing. I just think that this is an incredibly flawed way to meet that end goal.
Thanks, Michelle. Who else would like to go?
I'll go. I don't see this as a penalty, and I didn't feel like I heard people saying no more STRs. I think what's before us today is STRs are commercial businesses operating in residential neighborhoods. That has an impact on the people who live here. We have a study.
A little feedback going. I don't know if that's, sorry.
Angela, maybe use it just a little closer to the
Yeah.
mic.
We have a study that shows the correlation between those two things. There's an action, there's an impact. Here is a way to make a contribution to lessen the impact. I don't see it as a penalty for STR operators. The good news about this fee is that you can pass that on to the people who are renting your property, right? It's an annual fee that you as a business owner know you will have to pay, and you can adjust your prices accordingly. I also see voting yes on this ordinance as a green initiative. The EPS study demonstrates clearly to me that STRs create a need for jobs that don't pay enough to live locally. So that's adding to the number of cars on 82. That's adding to the number of cars coming through the community. That's contributing to the amount of emissions in the air we breathe. When people can live closer to their jobs, it's better for everyone, including our climate, including our visitors. I would like to address the comment about the grandfathering in, because I initially had a thought about that as well, but as I kind of went down that mental rabbit hole, I see grandfathering in as king-making, and I strongly believe that the town government should not put a hand on the scale, so to speak, in that way. And so while I think, it's good food for thought, it's just not practical. And yeah, I see this as a way for STR operators to contribute back to the community for the impact that they are bringing to the community. And I see this as a fee that can be easily passed on to the people who are, utilizing your product. And that's all I have to say for now.
Thanks, Angela.
Oh, sorry, I had one other thing.
Yeah, go for it.
I would vote for the ordinance as it is. I think that 2,500 at the 50% of what is allowable is, I think personally, that's a good place to start. I also think that 60 days for homeowners without the fee is a little generous. I would have been happy at 30, but 60 is fine. But I would be hard to convince me that a lower fee is appropriate. Once again, this is just one of many things that we will do, and I think that we need to focus on this ordinance at hand and not look down the road to something that isn't here yet about other tools and taxes and things that we can implement. I think we just have to take a bite out of it. And I think it's perfectly reasonable to say, this is the fee that the study supports. We'll charge half the fee and we'll assess. I think that the people in the community deserve action, and we've heard from a lot of people in the community today who are ready for us to take a step. Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. Who wants to go next?
I'll take it up. I appreciate everyone coming and speaking their mind. It's always great to see this process in person, because sometimes there's no one in here. So thank you guys for all coming and taking time out of your day. I'm more on the Dieter side of it. I do think there needs to be a fee 750 is getting closer to where I would think. But I think this fee is just such an extraction from the homeowners that have purchased these homes. I think the way Maley described it was actually very proper, is that a lot of us bought our homes here in this town that didn't have regulations that allowed us to do some stuff that, if we needed to rent a room, it wasn't, there wasn't anything against it. There are other HOAs that have set up restrictions in those neighborhoods, and I bought outside an HOA because I didn't want to deal with them. I agree with what a lot of people said. I think the taxing of a short-term rental for affordable housing is kind of pitting the short-term rental people and holding them solely responsible for many different things that have happened in our economy over the last 4 years. So I think these fees are just too much, and I'm interested to hear what some other counselors have to say, but I couldn't vote for any of these.
So none of the ones on the page?
No, they're all two.
I think part of that conversation is how much the fee is about. At least to me, I find a flaw in how the fee is applied. And I think, Trevor Benthusen mentioned this, and it was something I'd come to on my own, is per bedroom is just kind of vague, right? Because you could have a bedroom in a new construction that can charge twice as much as a bedroom in an older studio, but a bedroom's a bedroom, and they're still expected to pay the same fee. Or a bedroom that has 2 sets of bunk beds, and so sleeps 4 people, plus a sleeper sofa in the living room. So they're sleeping 6 people versus a 1 bedroom that truly has a king bed and is meant to accommodate 2 people. And so that, for me, is a big issue, is that if you just apply it as a percentage of revenue, then that's more evenly applied. The flaw for me is this, what I also deem to be too high of an amount applied, unfairly. And then how do you manage that as a town staff? How do you set those rules? It's so gray.
I can jump in. First of all, thank you all for being here tonight. I see a lot of familiar faces, longtime locals. It's very cool to meet the director of the Challenge Aspen musical. That was amazing last summer. And Basalt Middle School teachers and others. I know this takes time out of your night, so thank you. It's important to be involved in this process. I think for me, one of the reasons to run for council or be here tonight is to try and figure out how this community can be more functional, how people can live closer to where they work and not commute down valley, how this can be a town full of residents that actually live here and are invested in this community. A study we saw a while back showed that Basalt had gone from 72% owner occupancy to 61% owner occupancy from 2015. And I want this to be a town where people own into it. They're invested in this community, and I think we're seeing short-term rentals are a way that people can own in this community and maybe live elsewhere. That is what I want this fee to get at. This is why I agree there should absolutely be an exemption for folks for whom it's their primary residence. If you're short-term renting your primary residence, odds are you're doing that to help meet increased fire insurance costs or HOA dues or things like that. And I think you should have some tools available to deal with those increased costs. I think the 60-day limit on that is reasonable. If you're someone who's a true local, you're probably here almost the full year. And if you're gone more than 60 days, I don't think that exemption needs to apply to a resident like that. Regarding grandfathering, I've been thinking about that a lot this week of is this changing the rules? But the game is different now. The average home price in Basalt increased 63% from 2018 to 2023 alone. And so I think with a changed game, changed rules, are okay to try and deal with affordable housing, to try and stop conversion from something that could be a long-term rental into a short-term rental. I recognize many folks are saying it would be short-term rental or bust, and I hear that and I respect that. And I think this is just, it's not trying to solve affordable housing by any means. This, to me, is that if you're operating a tiny hotel, you're gonna pay a fee like a tiny hotel into something that offsets impact on the community. And I think it gives some flexibility, again, to people who live in their homes and occupy those units. And it needs to be a part, like Dieter said, this is a part of a much wider swath of policies and developments. It's going to take a fee on short-term rentals. We already have lodging tax. We could certainly increase that. We're looking tonight at a development of affordable housing, and we're going to look at increasing affordable housing mitigation percents, things like this. This is part of a much broader picture and a much broader toolbox. But because affordable housing is such a pressing issue, I think we need to use every tool in the toolbox, knowing that this might be a smaller one. And the story from the Tucker, the Basalt Middle School teacher, really struck me. With 2 master's degrees, we have a local teacher at our public school making $63K. For her to be able to afford a home, with the average home price costing $1.3 million, she would need to make $324,000. That doesn't show me a community that's working, and that's why I think we need to use every tool in the toolbox. And so I'd be comfortable passing it as written.
Thanks, Anna.
I'll go. As a grandfather, that word has special meaning to me. And, you know, I look at these exemptions as just a form of being grandfathered into the system. And if you look at the way it was structured, not only is it an administrative burden to manage those exemptions, it's also kind of could be a point where half of our 23 units are exempt from the fee, you know, or maybe less, I don't know, maybe more. And to a couple of points made about what people are doing to survive here already in their homes and hang on to their homes and finance their mortgage and maintain their connection to the community is astounding. You know, I think there's a lot of things to, I'll go right back to the question that David raised about the legal rational nexus that Jeff's provided. I got through, you know, I started to go through it and I gave up and I just read the last paragraph. So we do need some more work and some more education on how this all fits together. I also think that the 63K salary was an eye-opener. You know, we offered 17 units to the marketplace that is defined by our waterfall and essential workforce criteria, and the school district wasn't able to step up for whatever reason. So there's all our other partners out there that are suffering from other impacts to their cultures that have prevented them from being able to provide the affordable housing. The other thing I think that goes on is, you heard the numbers from Pickens County's economy that are, the numbers that are generated in Pickens County, $5.3 million in short-term rental fees. That's so far, that blows my mind that that's the kind of impact. They tout their goals of a balanced economy. Their balanced economy depends on the workforce coming from 75 miles away. And, you know, that's a major obstacle for me. I also think that the report that Kristen and mentioned about what else is out there and Brenda Wild mentioned is important to look at. I think one of the things that politically we need to do is know where we're going and when we need to go there. And I think it's premature to approve this tonight at $2,300 a bedroom. I need more information. I need to know a little bit more about the 23 units and what kind of impact they have. And I also need to know more about how we're going to manage this in the greater context of the Roaring Fork Valley. If we're going to continue to see large estates and things like that that are coming online just outside our urban growth boundary, and the demand that they're going to place on traffic, and Hannah's volunteered to be on a commission now to look at traffic again. And I think that, you know, we've got to have a solid platform to launch off of here, and this just isn't cutting it for me. It's not there yet, you know, so I'm willing to table this and move on, you know, have a conversation with Jeff about it, figure out what this impact's going to be administratively to the town of Basalt. If we're only generating $100,000 a year, half of that's going to go to staff to manage it. And then where does that leave us? So I want to make this more of a contribution in the long run. I came here for the same reasons that a lot of you did, you know, the Gen Z folks that are out there that are struggling and living in Glenwood and Carbondale. I've heard this story over and over and over again. And, you know, there's got to be a solution. This could be part of it, but this isn't on the right track at this point. So thank you for coming. We'll see you all again, I'm sure.
Thanks, Rick. I'll make some comments here. I'm always energized by this process anyway, kind of like what Ryan was mentioning, especially tonight, hearing really a cross-section of views. So thank you all for coming out and making democracy cool. It's pretty sweet. But I do recognize the positive impacts of short-term rentals, the economy and employment. You know, folks are pointing out that these rentals employ locals, and that's kind of the point. They employ locals that can't afford housing. And that's what this essentially is about, is trying to address that gap between what people can afford, who have to provide services for short-term rentals, and what, you know, the market actually is, which, you know, all kinds of numbers, but I mean, the punchline is completely unattainable. So I just want to be clear where my headspace is at as far as why we're doing this, right? It's not against short-term rentals, and it's not a mechanism in my mind to turn anything into long-term rentals. You know, some rentals out there are never going to be long-term rentals. They're going to be second homes. They're going to be empty. I accept that. But there's others that would become long-term rentals, and that's incidental to the process. You know what I mean? This is about raising those funds for those opportunities that we can engage with to help people who are working in these industries that are supporting these short-term rentals. So that's I think an important distinction to kind of stay focused on for why we're doing this. And people have also pointed out, you know, and correctly, that there's other things that we're going to have to do. And that's kind of part of the broader housing issues that we have here. There's a lot of different professions, a lot of different scenarios where we need a lot of different types of affordable and deed restricted and workforce, and a whole slew of different things that are going to have to be leveraged in order to work on this. And lodging tax may be something else, but I look at the lodging tax as something, if we were to broaden that, it would be more broadly for affordable housing in general, where this ordinance is focused on those specific housing gap for the short-term rentals that it's created. See, what else do I have here? And I think, I can't remember who said it, it might have been Elise, but, you know, it's probably the most efficient way to kind of align that revenue stream that people get from these. It's, you know, some people make more than others, some people have a lot bigger profit margins than others, some people are just getting by. But either way, regardless of that, you want to align the costs to where the money's being made, not kind of foisting it on the entire community, which is the situation we're in now, frankly. There's a lot of things that we externalize that just create problems for the community, and I love the concept of bringing those back into where the money's being made, because it's just fair. It's fundamentally fair. So with that, I would say I'm supportive of this as is. I know it's a big number, but it's half of what the model shows, and I think it's pretty conservative. I would be willing to consider other mitigation fee amounts. So, you know, I want to try to reach a consensus here with you all, but you know, that's where I'm coming at out of the gate. We have to act, right? Like, this is we're a decisive, thoughtful group of people. We need to do something. We've done a ton of homework on this. Now's the time to kind of coalesce and figure out exactly where we are together and move. And there'll be other things to do in the future. There'll be other opportunities to address affordable housing and workforce housing in general. But I mean, there's not going to be more information on this topic and this particular problem, which we're here tonight to address.
Yeah, one thing that made me think of as well is just thinking numbers, right? With 100K from short-term rentals, we're not buying a property for 8 years or, you know, whatever was said out there. But if 2 people decided, you know what, with the short-term rental fee that I could avoid and that SKICO Tenants for Turns program, it's probably worth my time to get my 2 free passes and avoid $5,000 in fees. All of a sudden, you just house 2 locals long-term, and we spent, say, $350 or $500K. We could maybe buy them that unit, but this would cause behavior change that makes that unit
Excuse me,
appear.
if you got a conversation, make sure please take it outside. Thanks.
And so it's not just about raising funds, which it does to some smaller degree here, but it could curb behavior, not in all instances, but even if it curbed behavior in just a few instances, you're creating long-term housing, and that has financial and community benefit to the town of Basalt.
Well, and $100,000, you know, I'm sorry, but that's just nothing to sniff at, as they say. And that's $100,000 that year, and then the next year, and the next year. I feel like we're having this conversation as though what we're doing by voting this ordinance is only impacting like the right here, right now. And that's not it. That's not the conversation. This is about starting to gather those funds, to charge that fee, to start to bank this money and to put it to good use. This is about the future. This is about, like Hannah said, somebody saying, you know, maybe it's actually not worth it for me to go down this road when I have to pay this fee. I'll just long-term rent, or 6 months, or 3 months. We have to remember and remind ourselves too that STR is 30 days or less. And I heard somebody come up and say about housing nurses for 3 weeks. I've been housing nurses for years, and I've never met one that wanted to stay only 3 weeks. I'll say that. But this is about taking a step now so that it impacts the future. Because if we don't do it now, we're going to be looking back on this moment and saying, well, we should have acted. We should have done something. Like, we should have just taken a step forward. Instead, we're sitting here and talking about all the other things that we could be doing, but we can't get to any of those if we can't start making some decisions. And I agree with David, we're not going to have more data than this. We have the data. We're asking half of the fee that we can support with the data. So again, yes, $100,000 is not going to buy a unit, but that money compounds over time. We can put it to good use, and perhaps it would curb behavior.
So we're getting pretty deep into the evening here.
Yeah, I was
Jeff.
gonna say, I'm wondering, just think of as a path forward. I don't think I heard a consensus for what's as drafted, but I think I did hear some support for a fee of some kind. And so maybe a path forward would be for us to look at some additional options on what that fee would look like. We also didn't have any discussion about some of the issues raised by public comment, and maybe I can provide some more information on, or we could have some discussion on the exceptions that are currently in the ordinance, and you know, through that maybe there's a amended version of this ordinance that might be find majority support. just kind of given where we're at in the evening.
Yeah, I think one of the comments from Brian was market conditions that exist in Basalt, which is a pretty clear statement. And I think that we really need to look at the market conditions in Basalt. And I agree with Angela, that this is a future position that we're establishing. It's not now. And $100,000 is a lot of money. But there's other things that have to be established as a foundation for this thing, because going forward, what's the demand going to look like? Where is that demand coming from? What's creating that demand? Why are people choosing to turn their second homes into STR? Why are people looking to do ADUs? Do they want to get into the STR market? You know, all that stuff. And we've also talked a lot about finding revenue streams that we already have available to us that could be changed or modified or altered. It can allow us to leverage that $100,000. So that's the bigger picture for me, is to look at where are we. On a national level, I don't see us being on the receiving end of the amount of grant money that we've been receiving for the last decade. And I think we're going to have to be prepared to go forward with a plan that's a little more fiscally dependent on what we can do ourselves and not depend on other people chipping in, because it's not going to happen. You know, there was a request made for $100,000 the other day that was kind of turned down by a local government entity because they can't fund it. And, you know, that's the question that I have, is what's going on in the rest of this Roaring Fork Valley and related to that. We have achieved a success with grants for childcare. We've achieved success with grants for planning affordable housing. We've been on a pretty good gravy train here, and I don't see that continuing. So anything we can pick up that's got a rational nexus is fine. But we're not there yet. I agree with Jeff. You know, we need some more discussion.
Rick, I agree with what you're saying. Like, I also feel increased urgency to raise money for affordable housing, and I think where that lands on me is that I'd rather do something now. So we're starting to raise that money, and then we can roll it back a little bit in a year as needed. We can address it. But I'd rather do something now and analyze that impact and get real data from that instead of waiting and trying to find the perfect policy solution when we have a good one.
Now, it could be 2 weeks from today, it could be now, a month from today, but not a year from today. You know, I want to do it now. That's what my urgency is to put this on the table, get 7 people to vote for it. Right now, I agree with you, I don't see a consensus. And so let's go have some of these questions answered and put it out there in a positive way and get it done. I don't want to wait for January. We've already had a discussion about how do we manage the license renewals? Are we going to do it right away? Typically, Michelle, I think you said it's done in February. So we're not going to renew these licenses till February. So the now is not going to start until those licenses are renewed. So let's get it right.
One of the things that can happen with whatever gets adopted, if something were to be adopted tonight, is that the renewals happen in December and January. So that gives the town and staff time to do a big education campaign on whatever gets adopted. So whether it's exemptions, whatever the term of those exemptions are, whatever the fee is, there's a nice long lead-up time of potentially 6 months to doing that education. So a lot of the questions coming up, will I qualify for that exemption, will I not, are things that we would have a chance to kind of bite away at. Because you're right, it won't happen tomorrow.
I mean, I feel like, do we have a consensus from most of us that there should be a fee?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do.
We agree on, for the most of us, we agree there should be a fee. I'm happy with I'm fine with the fee how it is. Sounds like there are a couple people who are. Are we, at this point, should we just negotiate the fee?
I think the fee is too high.
I think it's half of
what do you
what we can
propose?
charge.
What are you proposing?
The 15%.
15%.
I mean, because that does allow us to get some time and analyze it and see, you know, what number of units we're talking about and who or whatever, without really kind of slam dunking the 50%. And maybe it is worth a work session or something to where everybody, because there's a lot that goes into this, and maybe we need to see the scope of everything just to realize that this is just a little bit of it, and the bigger fish are out there that we need to start casting for. But that's not the question tonight. So, maybe it's a presentation of these things together. I don't know. But I do believe there needs to be a fee. I'm fine with the timing. I think it should be much smaller than it is now, to where we can, understand, get it, kind of research. If we, we could certainly see what the effect of $2,500, the 50% fee is, but my gut has a feeling on that one.
Yeah, I mean, a couple points with that. We are looking, based on the EPS study from last year at the suite, and that's part of what staff is working on. So I think the train is rolling on kind of the holistic picture. And with the train tonight, I think we have momentum on trying to figure this out. So I would like to figure out this fee.
Okay.
It just doesn't make sense to me to prolong it. Let's figure it out. We still have concurrently all the other stuff we're trying to figure out for the other tools, arrows, whatever you want to call it, but I think we got to figure this out.
I understand. I just, in perspective, there's this, it's going to raise $100,000, or it's going to raise $50,000, or I think maybe I think, at least in my opinion, it feels like, I think a the lodging tax increase is probably where you're going to get your biggest bang for the buck. That is my guess. But there's not a ton of that here either. It's not like Glenwood could speak of they raised their tax and see what they gained. I think proportionally it's going to matter, as long as we're all understanding that this is really just kind of, I know an individual person's things, it's kind of small apples, and for the town, that's a little small apples, and it doesn't get until it's in the basket that it becomes a bunch.
Yeah.
And even then, it's not that big of a basket. We're Basalt. We're not 30,000 people strong.
I have a question for Jeff too. Why couldn't, you have the exemptions. Why can't we do like we do with water charges and tier the fee based on what the person's asking for? In other words, when someone comes in and says, I have an ADU at my house, I want to short-term it to a traveling nurse, they pay what they pay. If someone's going to turn it into a party house for the X Games, then it's a different story. And I don't know if there's a nexus that you can make between the demand on the community and the fee that they pay for a license. But that is one, I don't want to lock it in a number until we look at some of these other things. We could be shutting the door to an opportunity to raise our fee based on the demand of places in the community, whether it's roads, utilities, or whatever it is. And that can all be part of this conclusion. But if we just go, $750, that's it, that's it.
Well, I think the other part is there's an exemption conversation. It's going to be fairly in-depth. If we take this here, then what are the exemptions?
Did you want to respond? Because you were.
Yeah, there's been some question, about the primary resident exemption, and we've looked at that a little bit, and we can look at it in a little more depth. Might be prudent for us to do before taking action on the ordinance. We did prepare that memo. I'm not sure if the council had a full opportunity to digest it. We obviously haven't discussed it in executive session or anything. But, as a couple of the opposers did point out, there is a case out of New Orleans related to, in that case, you had to be a primary resident to short-term rent your unit. Now, that created barriers, a hard barrier of entry into the market for only those people. And this exemption that we have is not a barrier on entry into the market, but it's an additional restriction on entering the market for non-primary residents. And So, we can take a greater look at that as a defensible exemption, between now and another meeting, or have some further discussion on that issue if you'd like. There were kind of the other exemption related to number of days that you're renting. That's another, I guess, item to push and pull on where that might be appropriate. Now, you're not creating distinct classes of persons through that days restriction, but that's another item for council to consider as to whether or not there's the appropriate number of days would be for an exemption. I don't think there's been a lot of discussion on that issue yet.
I feel like we've kind of coalesced on the 60, but
Okay.
I think it's the fee that's still kind of the outstanding.
I just want to say about the fee, again, who is the fee too expensive for? Because the fee can be passed on to the guest. The fee can be passed on to the guest, as with other hospitality businesses. This is my cost of doing business. This is your cost to utilize my business. I think that the more that we talk about the fee as though it's something we're imposing on individuals, that's not the conversation. The fee can be charged back to the guest. And I also feel like the more that we talk about lowering the fee is that we're taking better care of a smaller community of short-term rental operators who can pass that fee on than we are the people who are displaced and could use some support with local affordable housing. So that's why I'm not very eager to lower the fee. I could maybe agree to lower it a little bit, but once again, it is a fee that can be passed on to a guest.
I think that passing it on to the guest assumes that there's an appetite for that, right? I mean, that makes a rather large assumption without really studying, all the places out there and what they're getting versus what they want, and that, maybe they're already struggling to get $200 a night for 150 days or whatever it is, 60 days, 90 days, I don't care. I think assuming that it can be passed through, that's, a lot like assuming that tariffs can be passed through and that we have an appetite for that. I don't know that's a slam dunk.
Well, I think it can be passed on to the guest.
But yeah, that's
Elasticity, I
That's
think.
my opinion. I mean,
Well,
nobody's going to go to a restaurant and say, well, I'm not going to pay, if I want eggs, I'm not going to pay extra for them because they cost more. It's like, this costs more now. It impacts our community.
Well, no, I think
There is
people
an
will say,
impact.
no, I'll opt out of the eggs.
Well,
This impacts our community. It is a fee. We're not, I feel like we're talking about it like we're holding people up at gunpoint for their money.
I think some of us feel that it's placing an undue burden on some people that didn't expect it. I get that times change and we're trying to, we're trying to appease everyone in this, and we're trying to address affordable housing in this way that is a drop in the bucket. Yes, we need to fill the bucket. Yes, this helps fill the bucket. But it is also placing an undue burden on some of the people in our community that are using their short-term rental to live here. I know you think you can pass it, but for a 2-bedroom place, $5,000, if we kept it at half, I mean, that's a lot more money a night, and they don't know if they're going to get that. And so I just think the passing of the buck, I get the affordability. Listen, if I didn't buy a house 15 years ago, I couldn't live in this community. So I feel that pain, but there's unlimited demand for affordable housing. And if we don't start the conversation with that and start to work backwards, I just feel like we get stuff like this that looks pretty on paper and seems like it's going to generate income and is just one more thing that's preventing someone else from living here. And that's not what I came to do. So that's
I think that again, going so broad.
Yeah, but it's
This is
all
about
together.
it is, but this is about the gap between the affordability from what people make who work in these jobs and what the housing market is. And frankly, and I've said this before, all affordable housing should be about the demand of the community, not every comer, come on in. I mean, I know some people would like, part of the realtors would like that, but at the same time, like, that's not what we're trying to do. And I think, frankly, we're way too permissive of the few at the expense of the many. I mean, I think that's really what kind of tilts this conversation a lot of the times. We have a problem in this community, and there's one facet of what we're trying to address here. And I think we can figure out where we can land, where it makes sense, for everybody. And it's just, again, aligning those costs with where the money is being made, not foisting on everybody so we kind of contribute to this broader problem that we're going to have to address through a lot of different ways, right? But tonight we're talking about this.
Well, to that point, I think that part of my struggle with this and with the fee at that level is that I'm not as convinced, even with the EPS study, of that direct effect of short-term rentals, and that they should be singled out with such a steep fee. You think about the number of people in this valley that work multiple jobs, and how do you even, again, even with the EPS study, and I've obviously read it a few times at this point, I'm just not as convinced that you can really single out the fact that this server is here and employed by Free Range because of STRs, or are they just making extra money because of the STR visitors? Do you see what I'm saying? Even the housekeepers, property managers, they're servicing a lot of properties. They're servicing hotels. I'm having a hard time accepting that it is STRs and it's $5,000, again, at the max that we could charge, which is why, and I want to be clear, I am all for affordable housing and doing everything that we can to increase it. And I think that any dollar is a worthwhile dollar. I don't want to marginalize $100,000 or $50,000 if we can raise it. My issue is with the fee. I'm with Dieter. I think it should be closer to a smaller amount, and just like everybody said on the transverse, we can raise it if we find that there's an appetite for it, and we haven't lost people out of the market. And
the exemptions create a way for people to not pay it
Avoid the fee, exactly, yeah.
So how do you adjust for that?
Mm-hmm.
All somebody has to do is declare that it's a primary residence, and they're off the dole.
Yeah, sorry.
So you need to, that's got to be figured out.
Yeah, and I feel like we already had kind of coalesced and all agreed that as part of the exemption, we wanted to expand the exemption. We didn't just want it to be for essential workers. We wanted to be able to have a widened view, so we did expand the exemption to try and, let more people get out of the fee too. And I will say I heard a lot of stress in this room about paying $5,000 when you didn't used to have to pay $5,000, and that is real. But for all of that stress that I heard, to be honest, I've heard way more from young people whose rents went up, who are trying to make a life here. I've had so many friends move because their rent doubled overnight. Friends who were teachers, friends who worked in the hospitals. And I feel like Angel said, we've got to throw every dollar at this, and every dollar is valuable. And this is a way to throw every dollar at affordable housing. I think all of us have heard on town council that the number one thing to work on is affordable housing. Not the number one thing to work on is making sure that we have a small baby stepped approach to short-term rentals. And I hear the stress, and I know that that is a real impact on people's livelihoods. But I just have to hold space for the people who are stressed because they're on the other side of that coin.
All right, well, I think you're stuck at 15. I mean, that's like,
Yeah, I just think 50% is too high.
or 50% is too high.
50%, yeah.
How would you feel about doing a third of it?
I don't think this is
Let-
the
let-
place
let
to
Peter
negotiate
answer
the fee. This is
Well,
not the
yes,
place to
it
negotiate
absolutely
the
is the
fee.
place to negotiate the fee.
Well,
because we're in
after
public
maybe a little
space.
more discovery happens, but you don't have, if you want to just do a 4-3 or a 3, whatever it is, somebody put a motion on the table.
Well, we're not there yet. Answer
then-
Hannah's question.
Can I ask a question?
Let Dieter answer Hannah's question.
I gotta do the math real quick. Come on, so give me a second here.
Does it have to be a per bedroom fee for it to be legal? Again, I'm stuck on the whole per bedroom that can house 2 people versus 4 people versus 6 people, and how fair that is.
Yeah, I know that's how EPS has based their studies. I haven't spoken with EPS on that, but I don't know if you have any background, Michelle or James, on the.
And Brian's still online, he can answer that question.
Caveat, I'm not a lawyer. What we understand from talking to other lawyers is that it's important to distinguish this between a fee and a tax. And if it starts to be charged based on the number of nights sold, based on the value of the unit, based on the average daily rate, things like that, it starts to look like an ad valorem tax. And it's best to charge it on a more uniform basis. And the balance that we're trying to strike is that the per bedroom fee does provide some ability for you to scale it according to the impact of a more intense use from a larger unit versus just a flat fee per unit regardless of the size.
Yeah, I think that was kind of what I was looking for on the scaling piece. You could certainly do the flat fee per a license, just like a business license. I mean, I do agree, like, the ad valorem nature of a percentage on the value does make it begin to look more like a tax, but I guess that's the scaling mechanism that is more available on this type of regime.
Which again is why I would, like with Dieter, would rather go lower on the fee, higher on the tax, because the tax is a more equal way to.
Lodging tax.
Correct, right?
Which would be to the voters, it's not, it is.
Of course,
It's not for
that's what I
today.
mean, is that like, the ask to the voters would be higher and lower on the fee.
I think that's very sound reasoning, and I'm generally more of a kind of percentage tax person, but I think there's no ready-made campaign for that tax. So it's not quite apples to apples of like, let's do the tax versus the fee. Like, the fee is the thing that this body has the ability to implement. If there was some group out there, or the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition, or whoever that might be, who had that tax as a second option, that I felt confident that would happen, I'd be more interested in going that route.
Well, just to clarify, I mean, you guys have the power to put on the ballot the STR tax.
Like,
So
an increased
lodging
lodging tax is something
It comes-
that's in our toolbox.
It
to
comes
put
from
before
you
the
guys.
I know.
The
It's
time-
like the
timing
campaign
for
piece of that,
Chamber
though.
elections are limited to certain times of the year, so if you were something you wanted to pursue as an additional tool in the toolbox, that'd be a November election, and it would, probably be something the council would want to consider moving. If you wanted to pursue that in the fall, the time to start thinking about it is now, because notices to participate in that election come up in the summer, beginning of the summer, and then we would need to have ballot language finalized by beginning of September. But that's, again, an additional tool in the toolbox related to this issue, in addition to the fee.
And we could use it more broadly for housing. This fee is about the mitigation.
Be restricted.
So,
It's still restricted, that's right, yeah.
Maybe
Did you answer about the third?
Yeah, so, I
1,600 per bedroom?
yeah, so I feel like, I feel sort of in my mind where this is on the shelf with how effective it's going to be. This to me seems like 15% is an appropriate grab at this time. And I know with the idea that, yeah, we, you know, if it, if it seems to have legs, then we can grow it. I fear that much higher is going to send sort of it'll probably shock the system in my mind. I don't know, you know, so I just feel, because we're not talking just one bedroom, right? Most often than not, we're talking multiple bedrooms. So I'm going to stay with 15%. Sorry. Apologies.
I'm on board with Dieter's 15%.
And just to suggest another path forward here, is, you know, you're getting closer to the fee amount, but maybe it would be helpful to see how this fee would fit in with, again, those other tools, kind of as a comprehensive view at getting at the short-term rental issue. Again, it would allow for us to address any of the questions that might come up tonight for council, so you're more comfortable making a decision on the ordinance.
So Jeff, does that mean that we'll just put a motion to continue this basically so we can get on with the show? I know that we want to make moves tonight, and I want to too. I spent a lot of time looking at this for the last 3 weeks. So. But you know, it does. I don't know that we're all aligned.
Well, I'm saying,
or even the
considering
majority
the timeline as well. It's not something that's actually going to go into effect. I mean, I think we have the 2 to 4, whether we continue it to the next meeting or the one after, weeks to continue and to dig into this in another way. Michelle, I mean, you know best.
Yeah, we can
have the time to do that and then still roll out the education and put it into effect.
Yeah, you certainly have time to continue this another meeting or two. And it could be helpful for me to bring back the other tools that are coming in the toolbox. They're all related. So it's helpful for something to happen on this in the near future to help us strategize about the other tools. So I would just kind of say that it is a big picture thing, but we can, you know, certainly wait and continue as needed. Ideally, not a lot longer because there's a lot going on in all of the studies of all the other options. So happy to bring back whatever information needs to come back, but ideally not more than two meetings.
I just did.
What additional information though? Like, I just feel like, what are we waiting for to come together on a number?
So I did quick math, and you know, math's not my strong suit. But, okay, so let's say it's $1,600 per bedroom. Let's say it's a 3-bedroom place. So the annual fee is $4,800. And let's say they rent that place out 120 nights out of the year. That's $40 a night. That's an extra $40 a night. It doesn't seem like a lot when you put it like that. And I do think you can pass on $40 a night. It's not a lot.
The issue is you don't have 4 votes. I don't count 4 votes for a fee of any value. I think that modeling the exemptions would be interesting. Take your 15%, take the 30%, take the $2,300, take the 23 units, add up the bedrooms, model it, see what it is, have a discussion about whose appetite is, who's hungry enough.
And I, for one, even though I do agree we need to do something on this and we need to do it quickly, what we do as far as the fee and exemptions is affected for me by what other tools are coming down the pipeline. And that's because of the dollars, right? I'm afraid that if we go too big on this and we don't get it right, and people do feel penalized, even though it is not our intention, of course, for this to be a penalty or feel like one, then we might skew voters away from catching the big fish, which is what I would like to catch, is an increase in overall lodging tax by the voters. So that's why, for me, I would love to do what Michelle suggested and see what other tools are coming and use that information to educate this decision more thoroughly.
Not sure what that'll accomplish, but we do need to do both.
Mhm.
We have to walk and
Yeah, I mean, I
chew, we
think-
have to walk and chew gum here. I mean,
And we
like,
did have
it's-
the 1A tax pass, which raises $8 million a year. $1 million of that's going to the West Mountain Regional Housing Coalition, which is the buy down program. So like there are some bigger fish that are happening that got passed already.
We're just letting the, perfect be the enemy of good and progress, in my opinion, by not voting on the ordinance. But I'll continue to discuss if we want to table it.
Mayor, I move that the town council continue ordinance number 3, series of 2025, second reading to April 22nd.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Pam, will you please call the roll?
Did we vote tonight?
Well, that motion dies, so you need to have another motion.
Okay, let's begin with Dieter Schindler.
Yes.
Hannah Berman,
Yes.
Angela Anderson,
Yes.
Rick Stevens,
Yes.
Angel Dupre Bouchard,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
David Knight.
No. All right,
Motion
moving on,
carries 6
thanks.
to 1.
Moving on
Thank
to
you.
item, I got my glasses here. Moving on to item 6B, public hearing resolution number 14, series of 2025. Resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, approving a PUD sketch plan for construction of 16 residential units on parcel 9, Sopers Meadows subdivision PUD, Basalt, Colorado. James?
Yes, just a quick second, I'm sharing my screen.
$40 a night. 40.
Good, go for it.
This item is a public hearing to consider the parcel 9 Cypress Meadows sketch plan application. This is the property located directly south of the rugby field and adjacent to the rugby field at Willits. You see it here on the screen. As background, the town published a request for proposals for consultants to design an affordable housing project on the property. And Z Group and Connect One team was selected, and we have Scott McHale here from Z Group. They designed a project of 14 two-bedroom units in consulting with the Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission and considering the town's current inventory of affordable housing. The council had a work session on the project in January, and at that council work session, council directed staff to look at bumping up the project from 14 two-bedroom units to 16 two-bedroom units. And so per that direction, the design team amended the materials to get 16 units and submitted an official sketch plan application. The review process that we have on this application is a PUD review process. So it's 3 rounds of review by the Planning and Zoning Commission and Town Council. And this is the first round of review, which is the sketch plan. The proposal, as I noted, is a 16 two-bedroom unit project. It has unit sizes of 2 bedrooms each, and they are 950 square foot per unit. The units have 2 bathrooms, one being a full bathroom and a second being a 3/4 bath with laundry facilities. And the units, as you can see on the site plan and in the drawings, have 50 square foot decks apiece. There are also exterior storage units, as you can see on the floor plans, that are exterior to the units. There are some on the first floor that are adjacent to the parking, and then there are storage units on each floor as well. The parking is partially tucked under the building, and you can see those parking spaces here. And then when you look at the site plan, there is some spaces that are surface parking spaces that are outside the tuck under parking. There are 40 off-street parking spaces allocated for the project, which allows for 2 parking spaces per unit and then additional guest spaces to satisfy the town code parking requirements. The building is also proposed to have an elevator for accessibility as well as convenience. It has not been determined at this point as to whether the units will be for sale or for rental, and what categories the units would be deed restricted as. Those details will be sorted out later once more is known about how the town is actually going to finance the project. And we can speak to that a little bit further. In the staff memo that you have in the packet to the Planning and Zoning Commission, staff identified a series of discussion items for the sketch plan review. The first one being consistency with the master plan. The site is right here, adjacent to the rugby field. It's shown in blue here. It is in the town's urban growth boundary and designated as a community facility with an affordable housing overlay, which is consistent with the proposed affordable housing use. There's also a series of goals in the master plan related to the town finding creative ways to provide affordable housing and produce affordable housing. Staff believes that those sketch plan proposal is consistent with those aspects of the master plan. Other discussion items include the neighborhood compatibility. The proposed building is generally consistent in terms of the scale with the lakeside townhomes as well as the Park Modern condos, with first floor parking and 2 levels of residential above the parking. There's a diagram in your packet as well that shows a comparison of the height and relationship with the neighboring lakeside townhouses. And they're proposing a vegetative buffer between the adjacent lakeside townhomes and the proposed development. And the design team can speak to that a bit further as part of their comments. As I noted, the parking is 40 off-street parking spaces, which allows for 2 parking spaces per unit, plus some additional guest parking. It should be noted that some of the spaces will be reallocated from the park parking to parking for the project. The town plans to move the town parks offices that are in this building that was originally the bathroom building for the park to the town's new public works facility by the Mid-Valley Medical Center. So staff believes that some of those spaces that are currently mainly used by the public works vehicles will be shifted to another site. It is also acknowledged that the park gets significant use, and so staff believes that there's an opportunity to budget for and expand East Valley Road through that stretch to add some additional legal on-street parking in the area. So staff believes that the parking meets the town code requirements related to the number of spaces. Other topics included consistency with the community housing guideline requirements. The units are proposed at 950 square foot each, which is in the size range for all of the categories related to 2-bedroom units. And as we noted, it hasn't been determined yet as to what category the units would be or whether they'd be rental or for sale. The Basalt Affordable Community Housing Commission, BAC, reviewed the units and their consistency with the livability requirements for affordable housing, and they determined that they met those standards. BAC was supportive of the proposed program. Other discussion items included the traffic. Prior traffic studies on the site identified that there would be 9 units on the site. The traffic studies that were done assumed that there would be an adjustment with the additional 7 units to add 4 additional peak hour trips, and CDOT reviewed the additional traffic study and determined that an access permit would not be required. Other topics included green building and wildfire protection. There's some conditions in your draft resolution, but there'll be more information provided on those items as we go into preliminary plan and final plan review. The conditions include requirements for more details on exterior materials, as well as providing more details on landscaping and lighting at preliminary plan. And as noted, it requires meeting the SBR requirements and wildfire mitigation. This evening, staff would suggest hearing some more detail from the design team that we have here, and then asking questions of staff and the design team, and taking public comments because it's a public hearing, and then providing council discussion. Bach and the Planning and Zoning Commission recommended approval of the sketch plan with the conditions that you have in the draft reso. Let me please stop sharing my screen here. We have Sarah Ty from Connect One and Scott McHale from Z Group. Would you like me to bring up your guys' slides?
Your screen,
Yes, I'll bring up yours real quick here.
Awesome, thank you. So just to start off, I will describe the site plan a little bit to you guys. I know that you've seen this before, and I know that you are familiar with it, but I know it's been also a little bit. So I'll just take a moment to refresh you on the way that we're approaching the site design and some things that we've done to fit into the neighborhood context in the site design and try to be considerate to our adjacent neighbors and adjacent land uses. And then I'll turn it over to Scott, who will tell you a little bit more about the vertical aspects of the project. So, excuse me. The gist of the site design is that we wanted to locate the building in the most optimal location on the site to provide distance between ourselves and our neighbors in the lakeside townhomes to the south, while still not encroaching too far onto the function of the rugby field. So we wanted to maintain our distance from both of those uses. So you'll see that we have, from the corner of our structure that is closest to the lakeside townhomes, we have about, I'd say, around 55 feet between our structure and the lakeside townhomes, which for reference is similar to the distance between the lakeside townhomes and their neighbors across the parking lot. So for example, we have about 55 feet, and the distance between like the lakeside townhomes and other lakeside townhomes is about 60 to 65 feet. So we're fairly comparable in distance there. We've created a landscape buffer between ourselves and the lakeside townhomes, and then left a good open space buffer on the north side of the proposed parcel boundary between ourselves and the rugby field. So it doesn't seem as though we're creating a privatization of any portion of the rugby field function. In terms of site design, we have 2 points of vehicular access to the site. So we have one point directly off of East Valley Road to the south, and then we have one point that is off of the existing rugby field parking to the north. And the cars can flow through the podium parking to go in one side and out the other, basically. So the cars can drive underneath the structure from the south to the north or the north to the south. Fire access is provided from the south as well as from the north. So we have a fire staging area on the north side of the structure, as well as a fire staging area on the south side of the structure. That was established during preliminary coordination with the fire department. We have created on the south side of the structure some dedicated space for outside gathering for the residents. So in addition to having their own private space on their decks, we also wanted to have some community space where they could come together. So that's represented on the south side of our building with, right now it's represented as kind of a small gathering plaza that will continue to be fleshed out as we get deeper into the preliminary plan process. We have sufficient parking across the site, so we do meet the requirements for the Basalt parking code. We do have, if you'll notice in your packets, we are proposing some compact spaces, but we want to make sure that that it's noted that those spaces are only compact in terms of width, but not compact in terms of length. So they're a little bit different than what you might think of as a traditional compact car space. This ensures that fire access can still function even with a normal length car, and also provides just better functioning for those compact car spaces if a slightly larger car is parked in them. I think that's all I really want to orient you to on the site plan. And I'll let Scott kind of take it over now on the architectural aspects. But I look forward to answering, obviously, any of your questions as we go further.
Thanks, Sarah. Good evening, everybody. Okay, on the site plan, another thing to note that Sarah was kind of elaborating on too is we studied the building in a lot of different configurations and orienting it parallel, perpendicular, so to speak, to East Valley Road. Also helps with the distance to lakeside townhomes, so that it's a diverging kind of distance, which gets greater. So at perspective, it helps with that feature as well. So not to appear as crowded in that area. We'll go to the next plan, James. Just the floor area calculation sheet, which shows all the different areas of the units. And then I think, as we all know, to reiterate, when we met with you last, we had 14 units, and then it was discussed to add the 2 units potentially on the lake side, the west. And so we added those, so we have 16 units now. And then we'll show the kind of the impact of that. Floor plan stays the same. So let's jump to the first floor. So this is the same as we saw before. We have parking, tuck under parking. We have screening on the outside. The actual parking is a little bit below the grade that's out there, so it helps recess it down a little bit. We're playing with grade across the site, which dips down as it grades down towards the lake that's there. So that's where we'll be looking at some of the height challenges that we have on the site, and thus how we were writing of how we want to approach doing the height calculations for this PUD. Next sheet. This has the full units on it, so elevator takes us up to the second floor. We have 2 means of egress. We have a storage unit for each unit, and on this we have 7 units in here, so same as before. And then the last third level, this is the one that changed, so all the units in the middle and on the right stay the same, and then we added the 2 units on the left side of the page. So that got us to the 16. Next sheet, James, thanks.
Did the elevator go up there?
Yes.
So
Yeah, we have elevator for access for ADA plus just usability. If we're gonna take it up 1 level, we might as well take it up 2 for what elevators cost. And these are commercial designed elevators, so they're at the speed and access that the fire department wants also for stretcher access. Let's see, east and south elevations. This is just how we're just showing the height calculation compliance. As we wrote in the write-up, the overall is we are simplifying, kind of trying to make it easier for height calculation on this, and with the PUD, we've rewritten that part of it, so we're asking with 33 feet is to the flat roof area, and then 36 feet to the midpoint of a sloped roof. We're trying to keep it on the affordable aspect. We're trying not to go too crazy with articulating the roof forms, so we do have some shed roof forms. We have a lot of flat roof forms that we will have solar panels on top, but the flat roof forms also keep the affordability down so that we can build the building pretty straightforward, stick-built, modular, however construction panelized techniques we want to do. This is the most affordable way that we can build. We articulate it by popping up the little shed forms. It does not change the height inside. It's purely just for aesthetic and trying to blend in with the surroundings. We do have some other shed roof forms on the stairwells. We can see adding the unit on the left side, the upper is where it kind of starts breaking through that 33 feet. So that's where we're saying is to add those 2 units. We do break over that 33 feet on the flat roof. Let's go to the next slide, James. Thank you. And then on the west, we can see that again, those lines as they come down. And then this is on this corner, on the northwest corner is where it breaks that height, because that's where our site slopes down towards the lake the most. So it kind of has a pretty steep fall there. Yeah, and we can see that on the north elevation as well. So we can see how that pops up. The rest of the building is all in compliance. It's just where those 2 units were added to the top. Let's go to the next sheet. The sections, this is about the approximate distance between Lakeside Townhomes and the project, so we can see the 2 different heights. Buildings are similar. The buildings next door at the maximum are about 39 feet, so we're not reaching that. So we'd be similar height and scale to the buildings that are next door, same as we've seen before. Next sheet. And these, we went into the rendering so we can see the 3rd story added on the southwest 3D view. That's that elevation there, and we can see the grade dropping. Bottom right, southeast 3D, it's pretty much the same as we saw before. You know, you could kind of see that 3rd floor popping up on the left side. Next sheet. We've added a couple of new renderings, top left, just kind of superimposing, seeing the photo of the Lakeside Townhomes in the background. This is about what it would look like. So we do feel that size, height, scale is very much in unison with the neighborhood surroundings. Northeast view, same as it was before, but we can see that 3 stories. Bottom side, this is where it encroaches the most into that height, is on this side. So we'll be doing things with landscape as we see there to bring it up so the perceived height is not as much, but this is kind of the biggest encroachment area on that height. And then that's a view with the Lakeside Townhomes from that bike path that goes around the lake. And I think from there we can go to questions.
What questions do y'all have?
My only question is on the parking lot. You have the fire access just above the house or above the apartment. Does that parking lot connect all the way through the rugby parking lot? I just feel like that's gonna create a nightmare scenario for if you've ever been to the rugby field when it's in use during lacrosse and or soccer, or it's just already a nightmare as is when it's full. Then you're gonna have people fighting with I just think that barrier is somewhat important. I don't know if it's needed.
Well, having a barrier in between the
Yeah,
rest
in
of the
between
parking
them,
lot.
so you don't, I don't know, I just.
Yeah, well,
down
yeah, we've discussed using some of the landscaped islands that exist in there to delineate that difference. Some of those parking spaces that are kind of adjacent to the rugby field parking are guest parking. So they may not be occupied all the time. So the thought was to leave them open so that during games, maybe they would be accessible. We have had discussions about potentially putting a gate there, so we can look at that. So we can.
Is there something like automated you could do so that would be, which is it's up sometimes, down sometimes?
Yeah, we can certainly look into that.
The other thing I think we discussed, and I don't know that it would happen concurrent, but for that on-street parking through there is maybe improving that.
Yeah.
I could definitely.
Yeah.
So this is a public hearing. Should we do the?
I got a couple.
Yeah, a couple. Do you want to clarifying or? Do you
Yeah.
Okay.
Height, is it from existing or finished grade?
What's shown on there is existing.
Existing, okay, so you're 30, asking for the 36 from existing turf?
Yes.
Okay. Road improvements to widen East Valley, definitely. Ryan's right, on a summer night, spring night, they're overflowing into the traffic lane and parking in areas that are on the East Valley Road side there, adjacent to the lakeside townhomes. There's a lot of parking that goes on there. We've had feedback from the police on that one. One of the things that I was concerned about with the additional 2 units, if it's going back to the neighborhood for comments, And, you did a lot of outreach in the beginning for 14 units. Is that outreach going to continue to get support for the additional units?
It already has.
It has? Okay, and the feedback we've gotten then is what you collected since February, whenever that last discussion was?
So the community did participate in the P&Z presentation for sketch plan.
Right.
And provided comments there, and then there was some email comments. Sorry. The community did participate in the P&Z hearing, and then has also emailed comments, and those comments are in the
But
in the
no,
packet.
no attempts made to have another community gathering or anything like that?
No additional
So
attempts
just
made
the
at community
formal,
outreach.
just the formal process?
Correct, correct.
Well, I would like to see you, and it's up to you guys, but I'd like to see you go back to those folks that were in attendance at those meetings that you had prior to the sketch plan being submitted and inform them of the changes that have been made.
Yeah, they definitely are aware. They were at the P and
They
Z
were-
hearing. Yeah.
Right, but that's the formal process. I would like to see maybe some informal contact, just for the sake of the people that don't pay attention to our agendas.
There's quite a bit of feedback on the.
Yeah, there is. Yeah, and that was my next question.
Different about this project than, for instance, a private development is
Right.
that it's 100% deed restricted, obviously.
Right.
And so rather than having the teeth with a private development where we're ensuring that they provide rental units or for sale units per their free market approvals, we don't have
Right.
the necessity for those teeth. So ultimately, since, as we talked about earlier, we don't have a lot of funding for affordable housing, we're going to be a little bit at the negotiation with whoever invests in this project with us on what they're willing to do, whether it's for sale or rentals.
When would that process start?
It's in the works
In
now.
the discovery stages now?
Yeah,
So you have some potential investors and discussions ongoing?
right. So I would, in a perfect world, we would have a lot of that resolved by the end of this year.
Okay. So there's potential that it can be squared away? Because that was, a lot of those comments that we were in the packet were based on, let's make some for sale, let's make some for rent, and it was mixed bag.
Sure.
So, I think that's all I had.
Let's go ahead and open the public hearing. People have been waiting patiently, thank you.
This party really died after the STR. Continuing to hold this. My name's Jeff Clark. Thank you, David. I live at 106 Lakeside Court. Any chance you can put the overhead sketch on there? I'll try to be quick. In terms, I basically kind of have 3 points. I know we're going to go down the line in terms of like deed restricted or sale or anything like that. It's a big thing for our community to make sure that this is not like a short-term rental situation. Historically, I lived at the Commons in Marolt, Castle Ridge, and Aspen, and this is my wife and I's first place we've owned, and we would love to see whoever ends up in this unit take as much care as we have in living in Lakeside and being a part of the community. My second large point is, judging from here, you can see my unit right there is probably the closest one in the middle towards that. We would probably be the only unit of all the 12 Lakeside units to be kind of bifurcated by parking lots on either side. So would love to encourage, for the sake of us, shifting at least that parking lot that's on the north side of our building between us, if we could shift either the building or the parking onto the other side, or I heard the suggestion of more street side parking. Otherwise, we've got 10 foot on our property line from Lakeside, and 5 feet past that, I believe, is the parking lot, which doesn't really allow for sufficient screening for really mature trees. And to the point earlier as well, would appreciate just a follow-up to give some of the other homeowners another opportunity to like comment. And then my last point was in terms of encouraging either long-term rentals or ownership of these units, reducing the size back to 14 units, but maybe maintaining the overall square footage size to encourage more people to have the ability to grow their families in these units and have them invest in this neighborhood. I know you guys know how busy it gets with lacrosse. For kids after school, it's an ACDS pickup spot in school, so it's going to become pretty complex for us. And I'd imagine a lot of people are going to find parking on the other side of our building, which is what the residents utilize as well, which will complicate our HOA and making it a little bit more difficult to manage our own parking situation. So just give it another look over. Keep listening and asking questions, and thank you for listening to our comments. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Do you have anybody online? I don't think we do.
No.
Okay, go ahead, close the public hearing. And other questions and comments?
I'd just like to assure you that there will not be short-term rentals in this building, so you can, that's a guarantee.
I think it may be like more on the
Yeah, long-term,
yeah.
100%, and I appreciate you bringing that to our attention, and I think that's all our goal. Affordable housing.
Any potential conversations with RAFTA about changing that to a Velociraptor stop?
Not yet.
Not yet. And then the other question I have is, the campground property, it seems like there's additional units there from what was there a couple of years ago. Have you guys, do you know what that number is of additional units that went in there? It's kind of, I don't know if it's an appropriate question for this specific site, but it's an appropriate question for the mass transit opportunity. So if we could show RAFTA that there's increased density at a traffic stop or a bus stop, it might add value to that conversation.
I don't know off the top of my head, although I feel like that is my firm's project. I don't know off the top of my head how many additional units have gone in there, but there are additional units from
Yeah.
public and back.
Yeah, okay, so increased demand then for mass transit. Good. And then that park is also one that's on the market, right? The mobile home park.
I'm sorry, I
The
missed
Jason
that.
Mobile Home Park's on the market, I think.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's been Basalt, yeah.
So, anyway, that's all I got. That's all I got, sorry. Got away from the microphone.
What else?
I feel like I like what we're doing here with the amount. It would be cool to see maybe it retract to 14, but they have 3-bedroom units, so it does allow a little bigger family growth. But I really appreciate where this is tracking at this point in time.
Is the 3-bedroom, the lack of 3-bedroom because of just configuring it with with 2 bedrooms and maximizing the number of units?
Yeah, so our biggest need for our housing needs assessment study is for 2 bedrooms. Our existing deed-restricted inventory in town is mostly 1-bedroom units. There is a need for 3-bedroom units. The design of this floor plan allows us to do either factory-built or stick-built designs, so this is an economy of scale. And as I've said to Bach and to P&Z, this project can't be everything for all of our needs, so we're going to have to take a bite off of some of the units here, and then you have another affordable housing project coming up down the pipeline that might be a better spot for bigger units.
Got it. I'm going to ask a couple more questions related to some of the letters and everything, just to make sure we get clarity. So some people have raised the 40 feet setback from the other building is like, oh, that's too close for wildfire. Can someone kind of clarify that, like what the requirements are as far as separation, wildfire mitigation, et cetera?
The fire district has reviewed the building design and the site planning, and they have identified what they need to service the building. And it's going to have fire sprinkler systems as well as a requirement. So they were comfortable with it meeting the requirements.
And this the positioning on the property, you elaborate on why it is the way it is, or on the southern edge of the property, because people brought that up. I just want to make sure we kind of address some of those comments.
Sure, do you want to, or I can?
It should meet all the fire department requirements, and then the positioning of it was that we can have the fire staging both on the north and the south. So we met with the fire department pretty extensively on that. You know, we talked about the impact of having the fire truck go through, but it makes the height way too big to get the clearance of the big fire truck under there. But this was the best so that they can access it on, you know, 3 sides pretty substantially. The wildfire, yeah, we have a full NFPA 13 requirement here, so it's very robust fire sprinkler system throughout, as well as the meeting the wildfire code with all the exterior materials. It will meet all that as well. So we meet every standard that we need to for the fire department.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure, I just want to make sure, because there's been comments kind of like, why are things laid out the way they are?
Yeah, we're not asking for anything. The fire department's very strict about all projects now. It's very difficult. So that they're not letting anything get snuck through, so to speak.
Great. Other questions and comments?
One more kind of to Ryan's point. The field was annexed to the town as a multi-purpose field, and over the course of time, there was an agreement struck with the Aspen Rugby Club that they would have Holy Cross install the rugby goalposts on the field, and the term is being now used as the rugby field. And it's become sort of part of the community character. It also, we've been challenged a little bit that it's only for rugby. So maybe we should call it what it is a Willits all-purpose field. But that's just my own particular point of view. The other thing is the location of those posts are such that the field is not regulation for our activities. So it'd be nice to move those back at some point. If there's going to be some improvements to East Valley, maybe we can include that. And I've had 50 people ask me about that, so it would be a pretty simple fix. Then we could have full field activity.
I'll make some quick comments on kind of some of the discussion points. I think James, this is yours, right? Yeah, James, you had. So the PDD modification, I mean, there's a handful of them. They make sense. They're not too much. There's a ton of public benefit. So just for the record, I just want to make sure I call that out. Master plan consistency makes sense. It's have density there. It's a local stop now, but it's not too far from a BRT stop up at Willits. Makes a lot of sense that way. I would like to see with that, how we can maybe control or bifurcate that parking temporarily. Because I think that would be helpful from a flexibility standpoint, just for managing it with different events, especially if there was something automated, so somebody didn't have to go and put a chain up or whatever. It could just be done remotely. But compatibility with the neighborhood, traffic, all that. I would like to see, and I don't know if it's coming in a later stage, I guess is a question, an updated traffic study for the 16 units, because I think the one that's in there is for 14. So I'm assuming a 16-unit study or something.
Yes, that will be updated at preliminary, but you probably won't see any different results in the conclusion based on the 2 units. CDOT still won't require an access permit.
Okay. And it's cool, it's all electric. Do we need, though, what else would we use the right-of-way for utilities for besides gas? Because I know I saw that in there. In the
Fiber,
okay.
Yeah.
So it's good to still have the right-of-way, even though we're not gonna put gas into it, just so we can run other stuff in the future. Okay. I just wanna make sure it's not like a vulnerability almost to put gas somehow ends up in there. Okay.
There's a lot of other utilities that will run to the building. Telecom, like she says, fiber, sewers elsewhere, water, there's a lot of things.
Okay. That's all. I just want to make sure I hit the spots. So I'm supportive of this.
Mayor, I move that the town council approve resolution number 14, series of 2025.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Pam, will you please call the roll?
Okay, let's begin with Hannah Berman,
Yes.
Angela Anderson,
Yes.
Rick Stevens,
Yes.
Angel Dupré-Bouchard,
Yes.
Ryan Slack,
Yes.
David Knight,
Yes.
and Dieter Schindler.
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you.
All right, next up is item 6C, first reading ordinance number 7, series of 2025. Ordinance of the Town Council of the Town of Basalt, Colorado, amending sections 8.2 and 8.4 in Appendix C of the Basalt Municipal Code to update the time, parking zones, traffic control schedule, and fine schedule for the regulation of parking by the Town of Basalt, Colorado. And Ryan and Jeff.
Yeah, so this is a follow-up. We had presented this parking map, I believe it was at the last meeting, which is basically getting us ready to do parking enforcement in the downtown area. Just to remind you all, sort of the area that we're talking about includes Midland Avenue down to about the barber shop area. It includes Midland Spur. It includes Two Rivers Road from the bridge over to the Roaring Fork Conservancy, and then it does hop onto the other side of Two Rivers Road on Midland on either side. What we have is sort of two different parking allowances. One is for, or maybe restrictions. One is for 2 hour and one is for 24 hour. A lot of the 2 hour remains as it has been with some minor modifications. So if you think about the 2 hour parking, the majority of that is sort of in the hot zone, which would be sort of in the area that we just improved on Midland Avenue, and essentially where there's parallel parking, though it does extend down into the Riverwalk building area. 2 hour parking over in front of the Gold Rivers Court building, those retail spaces as well, kind of wrapping around in front of the community banks. And then there's 2 hour parking out here on Midland Spur that goes down to the planning building and then sort of in front of CC's there. And then we did one other 2 hour in front of the new commercial spaces over here at the River Park Lofts. The rest is 24 hour. In the past, that had been our 72 hour parking, but with more residents being built in this area now and then more to come, we just want to ensure that even sort of on that 24 hour basis, cars keep moving. So when we went through and came up with this scenario, we had the chief with us, we had planning, engineering staff, myself and Jeff, as well as public works staff. So I think we have a pretty good starting point here, and this is sort of one of the necessary steps to be able to begin that enforcement. So next up will come the signage. So we're in the process of ordering the signage. We've got our contractor in place at this time, and then we're going to do sort of getting ready for the public outreach piece of that, which should begin in May. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions. And I think this is not actually a public hearing since it's first reading. Yeah.
I'll just quickly add the text amendments to the code are to define the areas for 2 hour, 24 hour parking that are depicted on the map. To also provide the authority for the parking restrictions to be enforced by an independent contractor, and that contractor to have remedies like including turning unpaid parking tickets over to collections. So that was something we needed to get into the code. And then clarifying that the parking, the fine will continue to be $60 for 2 hour and 24 hour parking violations. So those are the text amendments in the code, but largely to kind of incorporate the map and provide the authority for that independent contractor to enforce these restrictions.
Thanks. All make sense to me. Questions or comments?
There's a component of trying to get people to park up at the elementary school during the summer months and concerts and so on. Is that part of the signing or wayfinding or?
Yeah, we do have some wayfinding already for that, but there's going to be maps that we create. All the businesses will, be aware of those, have handouts for folks. We'll be, putting our best foot forward as far as getting it out on social media and, getting it into the newspaper and just all of the things that we were able to do so that people know there's options.
What other questions or comments?
Mayor, I move that the town council approve ordinance number 7, series of 2025 on first reading and set the public hearing and second reading for April 22nd, 2025.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thanks. Next up is 6D, Resolution number 15, series of 2025, resolution of the Town Council of Basalt, Colorado, about right-of-way regulations and standards. And this is Catherine and Jeff.
And you get Harper too.
I know Harper.
Jeff looks different to me.
Harper's can help us.
Yeah. Thank you, Council and Mayor, for having us this evening. So tonight, we're bringing to you some new right-of-way regulations and standards for the town. The town has not historically had explicit right-of-way regulations. But, we've alluded to them both in the Public Works Manual and in the Municipal Code, and these new standards just act to complement those existing standards that we already have. In recent years, we've had additional impacts to our right-of-way, both through, additional needs around communications infrastructure, people wanting underground electric utilities, especially with wildfire concerns, and then of course with redevelopment connections to our water and sanitary sewer services. And then also with the Midland Streetscape project, we've made a pretty significant investment there, and then elsewhere on Two Rivers Road, as we make additional investments in our right-of-way, we want to make sure we're protecting that and making sure that contractors are acting in a safe and responsible way and restoring our right-of-way in a way that really protects our assets. So these regulations were drafted by Jeff and Harper with a little bit of input from staff to address those issues. And is there anything you would want to add to that?
I think you about covered it. No, we just wanted to make sure that the Public Works Manual and the code were all streamlined, and the regulations are a bit more on the regulatory legal end of things, whereas the Public Works Manual is more on the technical side, and so we wanted to just kind of marry the two.
Yeah, that's right. We're here.
I'll just add one more thing. I think the policy goal is for, as a package, to have the code, the Public Works Manual, and these right-of-way regulations allow us to best protect our streets and street improvements, and particularly those that are new, and by minimizing and mitigating against street cuts. And so that was one of the main policy goals, and I think we've worked through all those to kind of allow them to all fit together nicely.
Questions or comments does anybody have on this one?
Good timing.
Yeah.
That wasn't by mistake.
I like intentionality and stuff like this.
Yeah.
Mayor, I move that the town council adopt resolution number 15, series of 2025.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I move that the town council enter executive session for a conference with our attorney for the purpose of receiving legal advice on specific legal questions in accordance with CRS 24-6-4024B, more specifically to discuss 224 CV 30119 GBM versus Town of Basalt and 2025 CV 371 Basalt Sanitation District, and for purpose of discussing personnel matters in accordance with CRS 24-6-4024F, more specifically town manager.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All right, we're in executive session, so we can shut the TV down, and once we're ready, Jeff will